Good evening and welcome to a special program of Guyana at Crossroads, Guyana in Crisis. I'm your host, Michael Young. Thanking you very much for joining us and for letting us into your communities and into your homes. As you know, the topic for discussion this evening is going to be on the precipice of a constitutional crisis, the APNU and the Alliance for Change putting Guyana at risk. With me to have a discussion about what's taking place in Guyana politically and within the Parliament are members of the People's Progressive Party Civic. We have with us this evening from my right, Ms. Priya Madichan, welcome to the program. We have Dr. Stanley Paul, Mr. Anil Nandlal, and the former Prime Minister of Guyana, Mr. Samuel Hines. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. How are you this evening?
Well, thank you very much, Michael. I'm glad to be here, but extremely very, very saddened that we are where we are. Having said that, it is Pagwa, and I do wish Pagwa blessings for all of our Hindu brothers and sisters. Excuse me.
It's okay.
As well as the entire Guyanese community. You know, I remember sitting in this exact studio with the Prime Minister actually on Diwali night last year, when the GCOM chairman was unilaterally appointed, protesting that dark night in our country's history, where the President Granger and his team had departed from a well-established and oft-practiced Carter formula that had been established pre-1992 to negate from the rigged elections Guyana had been emerging from at that time. And on that dark night, we spent some time on this program talking about how dangerous that development was for the country. And tonight, on Pagwa night, we get to see how that danger has realized itself into Guyana being on the precipice of a constitutional crisis, where at midnight tonight, we don't have a government, we don't have a president, they're all illegal, they're all unconstitutional, our country is now at risk. And so it seems as though, well, I'm absolutely sure, and I'm certain we'll talk about it later on, this could have been avoided. It was very, very avoidable. And this was done by reckless politicians who are presently in the executive arm of government, who insist on holding on to power at all costs.
Okay, Dr. Paul, your mood at the moment?
Well, you know, all this unfoldment is not surprising to me, you know, because they say history is the greatest teacher. And if we should go by history, you will see that the PNC has a history of being sour losers and undemocratic internally in the PNC and on the national stage. So all this unfoldment is nothing strange to me.
Okay. Mr. Nandlal?
Hi, good evening, Michael, and thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this program. Good evening, viewers. Happy Holi. They say Holi main message is the triumph of good over evil, and here it is at this precipitous moment, at this momentous occasion, on the verge of our country sliding into an abyss from which we don't know how we will resile and get back to a state of normalcy, and that is caused by the government refusing to accept that its constitutional life, its legal tenure has come to an end, and to hold elections, which is the rule of the game, which is the constitutional requirement, which is the democratic norm the world over in responsible representative government in the 21st century. So in 2019, Guyana, unfortunately, our country is on the precipice of breaking away from the League of Civilized Nations, from the League of Democratic Nations, by a grouping of people clinging on to power after their tenure has ended. And the Constitution doesn't provide for what happens after that. So everything, there is a complete and utter collapse that will take place from 12 midnight in Guyana. The government loses its power. We don't have any president. All the ministers, despite of what they're saying, and seen them all over the place talking one set of nonsense. The fact is that their tenure as ministers and the tenure of the government as a collective wielding executive power will legally come to an end, and they will become usurpers and trespassers in political office. And it will be a free-for-all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hines.
Yes, thank you very much. I think what has struck me is that on the night of the passage of the non-confidence motion, we had both Prime Minister Nagamutu, or should I say most recent Prime Minister Nagamutu, making a statement at an impromptu press conference. And on the following day, we had also our president, our most recent president, within 2 hours, don't let me jump the gun, within 2 hours, our most recent president made a statement also. And maybe let me just read what Mr. Nagamutu said here in the parliament, at that impromptu press conference in which all the media was present. The confidence motion was put to the floor and the no confidence motion was passed. The options that are available after no confidence motion is passed in the House is dictated by the Constitution, Article 106. The government remains in office until such time as elections are called. The Constitution says elections in 90 days. The process in the National Assembly was an open and transparent process. Parliamentary democracy triumphed. He also used some words about comparing the situation with cricket, the uncertainty, the glorious uncertainty that there may be in political affairs. And the question to me that I have been thinking about is why the change? How did the change come about from the first 24 hours? And the behavior in Parliament when the NCM was being taken and when Mr. Chandadas voted yes, and there was this uproar. Certainly the behavior of each and every member of the government made clear that they understood that the government had fallen and that elections should be held in 90 days. Their term of office was essentially at an end. How did they come about to change their position, and why put the country through what we are going through at this time?
Okay, well, let us address those issues because we'll have a lot of time to talk. Let's look at a timeline of events. Former PM, you spoke about what happened in the National Assembly. Let's trace the events from Parliament. We heard the motion was passed. There was a press conference after by the government accepting that the motion was passed, and we were told by the President not so long after that he will uphold the Constitution, and that we expected at that point in time certain things would have happened. There was a little drama unfolding with the Guyana Elections Commission. We were told at that time that the chairman was ill. He was not at the commission. There were no meetings being held, and we heard subsequently from GCOM that they could not have prepared for the elections unless they were given an instruction or they were told to do so by the government. First of all, Mr. Nandlal, legally, is that accurate? Did GCOM have to wait until they got an instruction to start to prepare for the elections within the 90-day time frame? Let's address that issue first.
A 90-day time frame or a 3 months time frame is the standard time frame throughout the Constitution given for the purpose of holding elections. Whether a 5-year period comes to an end, a president, the sitting president, must issue a proclamation dissolving Parliament and giving 3 months, minimum of 3 months notice for the next election. If a no confidence motion is passed, that identical period is the period given. It means, Michael, that the framers of the Constitution considered it and satisfied themselves that a 3 months period is sufficient. Our GCOM, our Elections Commission is structured in such a way, legally, by statute and by the Constitution, that it is assumed to be always in a state of readiness. We have, for example, a cyclical process of registration that never stops. It goes on in a cycle. When new voters come on, when they reach of age, they are automatically put on the list, and the cycle goes on for a 5-year period, non-stop. So we put that in place to ensure that the list is always ready. And there is no provision in the Constitution or anywhere in the law that gives GCOM any latitude whatsoever when elections are due in terms of time frame. None at all.
Okay.
Because it proceeds on the presumption and assumption that that machinery is always and must always be in a state of readiness.
In fact, just let me before we leave that point, let me take this up very quickly. That's why we have a permanent commission. They are paid permanently.
Yes.
They are there permanently. These are permanent commissions. They don't get activated every 3 years or every 5 years when we expect an election. They sit there, they meet every Tuesday. They are supposed to be prepared. So I would give them, these are, the GCOM chairman is old, he's aged. That was one of our objections against him, that the PPP Civic had put up 18 persons as nominees for this post who were fit and proper, and by fit and proper I mean not only mentally and morally and so on fit and proper, but also physically fit and proper. And so I would give him that on the night of the 21st, when the NCM was passed, he might have been asleep, as was the CEO. But on the 22nd, when they woke up, their duty, their constitutional duty, was to get up and start making preparations for an election that was due in 90 days. I just want to say that this myth that is being peddled, that, oh, we never had elections in 90 days, in every other period from 97, I believe, to now, the date given, the date announced for an election has been about 60 days. So GCOM had 60 days within which to prepare, and they can prepare. In fact, it was GCOM who said through their PRO on December 27 that they are ready for an election and that they would be ready whenever an election is called, and no lesser a place than the Chronicle, the state's newspaper, carried that as a headline. So GCOM was ready, GCOM was supposed to be ready, GCOM was obligated to be ready, and I believe any state of unreadiness that they profess now is a profession and a state deliberately to delay elections, to protract the elections, and when we must view that with suspicion, because I believe, and I think it is reasonable for most people to believe, that they are receiving instructions from their political bosses, who, as the Prime Minister Sam Hines said, what we had immediately following the NCM was an acceptance that this is what happened and that we will proceed as per the Constitution. And then gremlins went into their head. The old PNC kicked in, the one that Dr. Paul spoke of, those who are unable to give up power democratically, who are unable to act according to democratic norms, and then everything got turned on its head, and GCOM, of course, followed the political directory.
Thank you so much.
If I may add further to that, prior to Nigel Hughes introducing the confusion powder of the Obeamax.
What sort of max?
Obeamax.
Okay.
Obeamax. Prior to Nigel Hughes introducing this confusion powder of Obeamax, GCOM was ready and willing and able, because GCOM had just come out of a local government elections, and anybody who knows about elections will know that a local government election is far more complicated than the general elections, because the local government election is like 80-something elections.
Yeah.
So GCOM recently came out of a local government election, and by virtue of that, it suggests clearly that in terms of preparation, they were ready.
Okay.
They themselves have said so on the 27th of December.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to take a short commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our discussion, focusing on what's happening at GCOM and what would have been taking place within the Ministry of the Presidency and their role in this entire debacle. Stay with us.
First, the Constitution our law says that in order for a motion of no confidence to pass, it must have a majority of the elected members of the National Assembly. I repeat that. It must have a majority of all elected members of the National Assembly. Our National Assembly has 65 members. It means that the motion of no confidence, in order to pass, must have 33 members who are elected as members of the National Assembly. The opposition doesn't have that. It is the government that has 33 members who are elected and sitting in the National Assembly. Formula has been 1/2 plus 1. So if you have 64 members of the parliament, your 1/2 would be 32, and a majority would be add 1, 33. How come do you have 33 as a majority for 65? Unless you can prove that 64 is equal to 65. So you can see that it's already, when you look at it, it's producing an absurd.
Welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us, viewers, on our program Guyana at Crossroads, Guyana in Crisis. We're having a discussion with respect to what's taking place in our country at the moment. We just finished, for those of you who are joining us, talking about the Guyana Elections Commission and its preparedness for elections. Let's continue our discussion. Let's talk about the Ministry of Presidency's response and President Granger's response himself following the passage of the no confidence motion. GCOM not being ready because the chairman was sick, the chairman returning, them realizing on the 22nd of February that, you know what, we have to at least say something. The chief elections officer now coming to the fore and saying that we need 100 and something days to be prepared, and all of the drama taking place. Let's the president's response. Is Mr. Granger culpable? Is he responsible for the chaos that we're now seeing within our society? Is he responsible for the point that we are at this moment?
Yes, I would say certainly yes. I don't happen to have with me here the statement he put out on the 22nd, the day after the NCM. My concern, though, as has been pointed out by a commentator, is that what we have been having since then is bamboozle. And one cannot really get down and have an argument, a rational argument, with people who are out to bamboozle the situation. They say one thing now, they say another thing next. They're slipping and sliding all around. There's a term that is used, but out of continuing respect, I would not use that argument about to describe what has been coming out of the government from the Prime Minister himself. We just saw a clip in which I'm told he was making the case for 34 being the majority of 65. When one think of that, how can one have any rational discussion with people who are holding to that kind of view, that kind of position? And that was given to us, was brought to us in the 2011-2015 period, that 34 is the majority. And as our former AG said, he threw it out at that time, and we continue to throw it out.
But forgive me.
So I'm frustrated. Mm-hmm. I must admit to being quite frustrated by what our president and our prime minister and our members of parliament of the coalition side have been saying, and how they have been dancing around since maybe the 23rd or the 24th.
But forgive me, the point I want to make, and this is an open question to all of you, the pundits and the public relations specialists within the government have said that the president did not respond favorably towards the opposition's call for early elections because of the court challenge, and because of the fact that the current Attorney General challenged the no confidence motion on several bases within the courts. There were other persons moving to the courts, so it was a wait and see sort of atmosphere. And being responsible, he took the responsible route, if you want to say that, to wait and see where this leads. How would you respond to that?
This is what I would say, Michael. That's absolute balderdash. The president, I saw former President Jagdeo go to both Mr. Nagamutu and Mr. Harman on the night of the no confidence. The vote came in, everybody was stunned, but there was no triumphalism from the PPP side. There wasn't dancing and jubilation, oh, we got you, you're down. It was, we now all need to be responsible, and we on this side are prepared to be responsible leaders, and we want to meet. And he said that from the floor, and then he said that to them afterwards, let's meet as soon as possible. It took the president 19 days or 18 days before he finally first met with President Jagdeo. Now I know President Granger has some illness and some sickness concerns, and so we're very sympathetic about that. But he wasn't at home and ill. He was entertaining the press and entertaining other people at Badrini, Benab, or whatever it is at his home there, and being seen at various public functions carrying on as normal. Then he met with the opposition leader. It took him 66 days before he could say to GCOM, I'd like to know. 66, he has 90 days within which he's mandated to have elections. To name a date. It took him 66 days before he could say to GCOM, what do you need, what are you doing? He was absolutely irresponsible. It was unpresidential what he has done, and the point that he has brought us to is a reckless place. This will be his legacy, and it's unfortunate, but he's done this to himself. Now, if I were president, what would I do? I would say, hold up a second here. I take the position he took on the Sunday after that 21st. That would be the 23rd. This is what happened. This is what is provided for in our constitution. We will go to an election. There's no cause for alarm. We'll do all that is necessary. And then if persons came to him, whether it was Obia mathematics or magic mathematics, and he felt that he needed to test it, he should have said, if I were president, I would have said to GCOM, you prepare for an election within 90 days. And I would have said to the opposition leader, we are approaching the courts. Let's jointly approach the courts to get this heard early, not a specific decision, but that the date for hearing and decision be done early. We got a decision on the 31st from the first court. I would have asked the second court, which is the Court of Appeal, to hear this quickly so that we got a decision within a certain time. And I would have asked the CCJ for the same thing, so that he would have had a timeline. And he could have said to the people of Guyana, listen, we will have an election by X date if the courts rule against us, but we are going to exercise our right to go to court. So he could have done both within the framework. He could have done both simultaneously. The opposition, through its leader Bar Jagdeo, sounded out very early that if they needed a small extension, we were prepared to go and give them the 2/3 the Constitution mandates. So that could have been done. He could have said, we're taking it to court, but these court processes will be finished by this time. On that same date he made that decision, he could have said to GCOM, you start preparations right now. All this dancing, PM didn't want to use the word duplicitous and double-edged, but all saying something in the press, so I'm interested in complying with the Constitution, but then doing nothing to comply with that Constitution is irresponsible, it is reckless, and it was calculated to delay elections so that the PNC-AFC could stay in office without the mandate of the people of Guyana.
Okay, Dr. Paul and Mr. Nandlal, the government seems to have placed their confidence in the Attorney General and his legal advice. They seem at every step of the way to be following all that is being said. Go to the courts, ask for a stay on the decision that was granted by the Chief Justice, move to the CCJ, hire this barrage of lawyers, spend this money, and all of these things. They seem to have a lot of confidence in the legal advice.
Just to clarify,
yes,
this Chief Justice, no one granted a stay.
Yes, we know. So we're saying they seem to have a lot of confidence in what the Attorney General is saying. What would be your take on that, Mr. Nadal and Dr. Paul?
Well, it's not. I don't think.
And also, given his track record in court,
it is a mentality you're dealing with. You're dealing here with a philosophy. You're dealing with the thinking of a set of people. Paul spoke about the history of rigging elections. In 1968, 73, 1980, 1985, massive rigging of elections. They used a mechanism of overseas voting. You saw dead, thousands of dead people. 1/3 of our list was constituted overseas voters. That was a mechanism that they used for the 68 elections and 73 elections. They rigged the 73 elections to such an extent that they had a 2/3 majority, so they could change the entire constitution, created the executive presidency, where they became the head of government as well as head of state. This is the mentality of these people. The president had all the powers, unlimited powers. This is the mentality that you're talking about. They were in the wilderness for 21 years. During that time, they lost the 92 election, they burned, they looted, they beat. They lost the 97 election, they burned, they beat, they loot. They lost the 2001 election, they burned, they beat, they loot. That is their legacy. So 2006, that didn't happen. 2011, they got a foot in. 2015, they eventually won, though we challenged the elections. From the time they took office, I have studied them carefully, one by one. Take the Attorney General. This is a man who stands up, a lawyer of 35 years standing, stands up before the highest court of this country and tells judges of this country that the judiciary cannot direct the executive if the executive is accused of breaching the Constitution. If you internalize that I just told you there, you would see that this is an insane mentality you're dealing with. You're dealing with authoritarianism. This man is saying whenever they act outside of the Constitution, is that they're wrong. It is the Constitution wrong. Yes. So you got to study this thing and internalize the mentality of the people you're dealing with. Joseph Harman is a lawyer of 25 years standing. Joseph Harman writes a letter to the Police Service Commission. Writes, not calling the phone, writes. It means that he took a pen and he wrote and then read it back and signed it. A letter to the Police Service Commission upon the instructions of the President, and the letter says that, to halt police promotion. When the whole purpose of the Police Service Commission is to insulate police promotion from the executive. You understand?
Yes.
You have a president who calls into his office the head of the Public Service Commission, what is trade union name? Carville Duncan, and instructs him to resign or else there will be blood on his carpet. That is the mentality. I saw Ramjatan, a lawyer of 35 years standing, speaking at some school in Kitty, telling the people who were listening to him, 12 or 13 people, that the government will not be illegal. 12 or 13 people in a school. That the government will not be illegal from the 21st of March. That nothing will happen. It's business as usual. Something has to be wrong with you mentally. Mentally. I heard Imran Khan, I don't listen to him, but I was scrolling on my Facebook page. And this gentleman stands and the camera obviously is rolling. And he speaks about the number of elections which have been held before time in Guyana and number of elections which have been delayed. And he makes the point, what is wrong with this election now being delayed? This guy completely takes out of his thinking that the end, the tenure of the government in this instance has come to an end. The final point I want to make is this. Burnham is recognized as a political demagogue. He rigged elections and he stole franchise of the people of this country. But Burnham had the decency to extend the life of his government after the 1973 elections, 73 and 5 and 78. He went, before he went to that referendum, which he rigged, he extended the life of his government. Before, Hoyt rigged the 1985 election massively. The PPP got 9 seats. The People's Progressive Party with Jagan alive and Jagan alive got 9 seats at an election out of 65. That was the massiveness of the rigging. But for the reforms to take place, Desmond Hoyt ensured that he got Chelly Jagan's support to go to the parliament to extend the life from 1990 to 1992. This government here has not solicited Jagdev's assistance and the PPP assistance to go back to the National Assembly to extend his life. It remains, and now I see in a letter the president saying that he is likely to fix a date in the time frame suggested by GCOP. That does not change anything. Let us say he fixes November as the date. He is illegal from now until November. There is a belief out there that if he fixes a date, that eradicates the illegality and everything becomes normal. He will be illegal from now until the date when elections are going to be held. In fact, unless he fixes that date tomorrow, technically speaking, he loses the authority to fix a date for election.
Okay.
Right.
And that is the danger. That is why it's like, as the opposition leader said, it's like a coup. It's like if, you see, you gain government by way of the Constitution. You remain in government by virtue of the Constitution. All the powers you exercise as a government, you get it from the Constitution. Here, they have outlived the Constitution. They are operating outside of this document. So they have no power. They have no legality.
Okay, let's fast track to some comments that were made by the opposition leader last week and earlier this week that took social media by storm. Mr. Jagdev said when the government representatives or persons parading as ministers visit the communities and the homes, of ordinary citizens, that they must chase them out. Persons took that to mean a call to violence. Some people said Mr. Jagdev is inciting fear within the Guyanese public, and that somehow his the choice of words, chase the government officials out, means that the PPP is saying to its people, this is your call to action to move to the streets or to do something unconstitutional or illegal. How would you respond to that, Dr. Paul, Priya, and yeah?
Well, we must recognize that from midnight to night, the government is illegal. And we must recognize that they have chosen deliberately to be illegal through the series of actions and non-actions that we've been discussing there. And I would imagine if it were me, if I were in the shoes of the leader of the opposition, I may have yielded to saying maybe something even wider than that. What is one to do when these people leading a significant portion of our population choose to lead themselves and their population into this area of illegality, and more than that, an area where they can generate, where conflict could be generated amongst our people? I am particularly upset, mad at the leadership of the AFC, of the APNU AFC coalition, for leading our people into this morass, into this situation. I'm particularly upset at them, and we are upset with them. Our position is that the normal rank and file supporters of the PNC, APNU, and AFC, we have nothing against them. They have the right to support the party of their choice. Our quarrel is, my quarrel is with the leaders. And that is why if you heard the full talk of the leader of the opposition, he talked about chasing the leaders, but he talked about fraternizing with the supporters of the APNU AFC and welcoming them to come and be with us.
Dr. Paul, is that a call to violence?
No, it's not a call to violence. In fact, I would say that Dr. Jagdev is correct, because the thing about it, prior to the no confidence motion, persons weren't seeing the ministers. They change the number, they drive around the place in state vehicles with the windows wind up and so forth. So he's correct in that, advising people to chase them, because not only because they never used to come in the first place, But when they come now, all they're coming to do is make promise that they can't fulfill.
But that,
listen, the
yes,
PPP has never been a violent party. All right, so let's put this to rest now. Should people be angry? Of course, people should be angry. People should be downright mad. I am angry. I am angry that we have placed whether we voted for them or not, they are in office, and these are our leaders behaving like this recklessly and irresponsibly, and refusing to follow our laws that we ask regular citizens to follow. So I don't know if when the president doesn't follow this constitution, how you could tell a man he must stop at a stoplight. How you could tell a man that he can't go in somebody's house and thief what he feels like. If you're going to suspend the laws you feel like, then you're telling our citizens they can do the same thing. We have never been a violent party. That's not to say that we can't be a violent party. Everybody has a little bit of violence in them and can be pushed to action, but we have been very, very careful and very responsible in our public comments and statements coming from the leader of the opposition right down, and both publicly as well as in the bottom house meetings and in the community meetings, saying that we will not be burning Regent Street, we will not be looting people's stores, we will not be beating people up, but we will be protesting, we will be exercising our civil rights to demand that this government comply with the laws that this country has. And it is very important that we ask ourselves, if you think that was a call to violence, then think of what would have happened. Let's compare violent political parties. Had the PPP been in office and lost a no confidence motion on the 21st of December, what would have happened to this country? The PNC would have been all down Regent Street beating up people. Don't forget, taking off women's clothes, sexually assaulting them. This happened in our country in our recent past. Looting, threatening, driving fear into people. We did not do any of that, and we will not be doing any of that. We will be exercising our right to bring to the attention of the people of Guyana and the people who are our friends overseas that this is an unlawful, illegal, unconstitutional government, but it's not going to get violent. We say chase them out, but we don't say beat them and chase them out. Chase them out literally and chase them out figuratively. When they come to you to speak, chase them out in your head. Yeah, when they come to your community, chase them out. Tell them what Dr. Paul just said. Where the hell were you in the last 4 years? But what services have you given in the last 4 years? Get out of my place.
But we're talking about the 30 to 40 leaders in the chasing out.
Yes, the government minister.
About the rank and file persons who support the APNU and the AFC. We're talking about the 30 to 40 leaders who are misleading them.
Okay, Dr. Paul?
Yeah, but the thing about it too, for me, I think it would be irresponsible and reckless of Dr. Jagio to say otherwise, because if he is aware based on the behavior and the track record and so forth, they're nothing more than conmen. Why should he encourage them to listen to these conmen?
Okay.
So, you know.
There is another element of this thing that I don't think that we are speaking about enough. Quite apart from the damage and destruction that this is doing to the image of our country, abroad and universally, it is an assault on the democratic polity across the region and in fact the entire Commonwealth. You see, our constitution, this no confidence motion mechanism that is in our constitution, is in the constitution of approximately 50 countries.
Yes.
All part of this family of Commonwealth nations of which we are a part. And in India alone, when I checked it, over 1,200 no confidence motions were passed in India alone. In Canada, several was passed. In Australia, in Barbados, one was passed a couple of years ago. In St. Kitts, one was passed not so long ago. In England, several have been passed. And governments, on every single occasion, it was unthinkable that a government will not resign. When it happens, every time it happens, government resigns, because that is the democratic norm, quite apart from the constitutional requirement. It is the normal practice of democracy. But in their country, you have a head of state that is different from a head of government.
Yes.
So it is the head of government that has to resign when the no confidence motion is passed against the government. In Guyana and in those countries, the head of state, if the head of government does not resign, the head of state has the power to dismiss him, fix a date for election, and dissolve parliament.
Yes.
Our constitution doesn't have that safety mechanism because the head of government is the head of state. And that is why that one person, and David Granger, the president, he's going to be president for another hour or so, must be held responsible. The buck stops at him. It is in him lies all the executive power. The cabinet members and so on, they draw it from him. So it is him who is responsible for the state of lawlessness that this nation will cascade into in about
1 hour,
1 hour from
15 minutes. No, why the big school of thought, people are asking, why does the government not want these elections? Why is the government so fearful of facing the electorate when in 2015 they faced the electorate, made promises, were happy to go to all sorts of meetings and rallies. They complained about the PPP and the party's legacy in office, and 4 years after, you say you've had an excellent tenure in office, you've brought massive developments, you've fought corruption. Why is the government fearful of going back to the people?
Because all of those things that they've been saying, they are aware that it is not true. And that is why...
And the people are now aware.
And the people are aware. And they are fearful that they will lose the next election.
And PM, they have done worse than they have accused the PPP of doing. The billions and billions of dollars that they have stolen, they have said that PPP stole. They charged me with a couple of books. They charged Irfan Ali with a couple house lots, none of which he benefited from. Sira, Ashley Singh, them get charged with, for movie town that they went and they opened and they're celebrating. That is all that they have to show for the corruption. But look at how their lives have changed in 3 and 4 short years. We have clippings and photographs of the mansions that they have built in 3 and 4 years.
Yeah.
How that happened? So they can't go out there, and they have lost track completely. This government, now they're doing walkabout. Over the past 4 years, they have not left Georgetown unless it was absolutely necessary. I am telling you, even Plaisance, the village just outside of Georgetown, even Sapphire, they have left those people abandoned, people who voted for them. Forget PPP supporters. They never visited them. But their own supporters, Buxton, Nabakalis, Anns Grove on the East Coast, abandoned all those villages. That is why they're afraid.
No, Michael, I think one of the best things I say now in retrospect that happened when we lost, whether we lost it or not, let's take it as a fact now. Let's forget that we have a petition that wasn't heard up to now, 4 years later. Whether we lost the election, we will assume we lost it. One of the best things that came from the change of government, from the PPP to the PNC, AFC, APNU, is that people now get to compare. They get to compare what the PPP was, what the PPP offered, what services we did, how often you saw us, how often you could tell us off if you wanted to, and they get to compare now with the APNU. What services are you getting from them? Do you see them? Could you tell them off if you want to? Do you dare? The Chronicle doesn't even carry news, any story about the opposition. We dared not do that. I mean, we had problems there too, but we dared not do that. The level of corruption and the blatant corruption that you're seeing from this government, it's not the PPP saying that, you know why they can't go to an election? Because the people of Guyana have seen that, the people of Guyana are seeing that, and people have examined, well, hold on a second here, and people will tell you that when you walk down the road, hold on a second here, under y'all, whether I liked you or not, or whether I liked everything you did or not, my life was better under you.
Yes.
My life was better under you. For 7,000 sugar workers, for sure, they could have put lunch in their children's lunch kits. Right now, they're dependent on this charity program and that charity program to give their kids lunch at school. Do you understand what I'm saying? The supporters of the PNC who have been faithful over the years, who believe that party to be the party that espouses whatever it is they want, they totally abandoned those people. Single parents who could have benefited under the Women of Worth program, who could have benefited under the Because We Care program, not single parents alone, but everybody else. But those people have no means of getting any benefits now. And it doesn't matter that they have faithfully stood with the PNC all the time, because this cabal of leaders, these 30, 40 persons that the Prime Minister is speaking of, that the leader of the opposition spoke of when he said chase them out, these are the people whose lives have benefited, who have tremendously changed their earnings. You remember they said within a month of them entering office, they increased their salary by 50%, took it up to $1 million. That was their first thing. And they said that they had to do that because they don't, this is how much they were earning. So we said to them, okay, well, show us your tax returns for the last couple of years. Let's make sure this is really what you were earning. Never did. Refused to do that. They said we're corrupt. We took a motion to Parliament and we said, okay, let's hire a reputable international firm to trace assets overseas. Never did that. We asked, they collapsed the Integrity Commission for a few years so that they didn't have to declare anything. Even having the commission on board now, apart from some serious concerns I have about affiliations in that commission, but the commission has published names of ministers and top government officials who are benefiting from the largesse of the state, from the people's money, who have failed, refused, neglected to file their integrity commission information, and who, despite the publication of their names and the gazetting of their names, refuse to do that. So the people of Guyana have seen that under the PPP there's progress, there's development, there's movement not only for one set of people but across the country. And under these people there is stagnation, there is loss of job, there is a change in lifestyle. The US is now $230 to one, 230 Ghana dollars to $1 US. They've seen that. People have seen where they're unable to buy data for their phone, where they're unable to photocopy their children's schoolwork that they need, do the assignments and so on. People feel that, they know that, they understand that. And the government, if there is one thing they know the feeling of the people. Who would not, if you won with such goodwill less than 4 years ago, I would have jumped at the chance of going to an election again, riding on that same goodwill. The problem with them is they no longer have that goodwill because they have treated our people, their people, the Guyanese people, so very, very badly. And so they're afraid to face them physically and at the polls. In the last day, on Wednesday, they had a set of outreaches across Georgetown, 2 and 3 big ministers turning up, and with 12 and 13 people begging people to come off the road to their meetings, carrying away stacks of their flyers and newspapers and propaganda that they took to share out because there was no one to share it to, because people just don't want to hear from them.
I want to challenge all of you, Sam, Anil, Stanley and Priya, to respond to this accurately, that the PPP badly needs these elections because they're afraid of Suku and Sarah and the probes that are taking place, that the PPP is desperate for these elections because they're also afraid that a couple months down the line Guyana is going to start to benefit from oil and the oil resources. This is the notions and the arguments being put out there, that the PPP badly needs these elections because Barrack Jagdeo is seeking another avenue to get back into power, that the PPP is desperate for these elections because they're fearful that they may not be able to access and win the 2020 elections. And I also want to put to all of you for a response that the PPP is also very afraid of the work being done by Clive Thomas and the WPA with respect to the siphoning off of billions of dollars of funds and state assets. That is why the PPP is desperate for these elections.
Let me try to start. SOCU has been established there by us, and they took over shortly thereafter. Non-stop investigation SOCU has been doing. Me, Irfan, Ashley, Siraj, Dharamlal, and 2 other people are all the persons that they have charged in 4 years. Dharamlal and Siraj were charged for no money was missing,
Not making an entry.
right? Failing to make some entry somewhere. Irfan was charged with distributing Prado Vale house lots,
In a national housing.
right? I was charged for labos. Ashley Singh them were charged for selling out the properties to business people that these people are benefiting from. Clive Thomas has been saying over and over again that he's doing some $10 million investigation. Charges would have been likely, persons would have been named a year ago or 2 years ago. Nothing has happened. It's absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. We have said over and over again to charge. What more do they need? They brought investigators from the United Kingdom. They brought consultants from the United Kingdom. What is preventing them from charging? So this fear factor that they want to, that PVP, afraid of what? Afraid of what? They cannot even, they did how many 20-something forensic audits? 50-something forensic audits. And these are the charges that they come up with. And they have all the capacity. They are in government. And they are despots in government. They know how to abuse power. They know how to control agencies. So they have everything at their disposal. We left them with a treasury full of money so they can hire the best in the world. What are we to afraid? What should we be afraid of? Yes, we would like to get back into government because they are a catastrophe. They are incompetent, they are inept, they are unqualified, they mismanage the country, and they have caused total anguish and suffering to the people of this country. 30,000, 50,000 jobs have been lost. 10,000, 15,000 in the sugar sector alone. Rice, forestry, all the forest operators have gone. Mining has declined. Every aspect of the productive sectors of this country have declined. That is what they have done to Guyana. Their own statistics have shown you how economic growth has declined. Every year that Jordan presents a budget in the parliament, he gives you a lower economic growth rate. And we are saying that those figures are not accurate. Priya spoke about how the US dollar has declined. Trade has declined, commerce has declined. Walk Regent Street and talk to the business people. Every area of life has declined. So yes, we would like to get back into government because we want to improve the lives and lot of our people.
Mr. Henson.
Well,
Your response.
I think that Anil has basically said it all, and I can reiterate all that he has said there. But I would say too, all these allegations he's responded to, but the important thing is there was an NCM that they recognized on the 21st of December, and elections were to be held within 90 days. We don't have enough time to get into the ridiculousness of a lot of the charges. And also, I think I wrote a few letters to say that a lot of the allegations had to do with our different policies and principles. For example, we sold land basically at around $4 million an acre for many good reasons to 70,000 or more ordinary Guyanese who got house lots. They benefited from much the same thing. In the case of the movie town, which was recently opened, we, as far as I know, they paid a higher rate than the Giftland people who were there. So there was no discrimination or so. We pursued development of our country, and to a large extent too, I recall Dr. Jagdeo speaking, president at the time, that our putting land into the economy was a gift to the people. A gift that the PNC could have pursued at the end of the 80s instead of sending policemen to beat the squatters in Sophia, where they were planning to put it for high-end development for themselves and their friends. We gave it to the squatters who were there. We regularized it and did it. So we had lots of policy differences, and a lot of what they accused us of corruption was basically difference in policy. I was particularly struck by the anger. I was going to the Marriott. The Marriott was something that they were particularly very angry about, that we found a way to manage to complete the Marriott. What they wanted was that the Marriott should have been stuck at half completion, with it standing up there like bones, like happened to the cacique at Providence. That is what they wanted, and we found a way to get it. What would have been better for our country? What would have been better? We did nothing illegal. We did nothing illegal in completing the Marriott, but they were against the way we did it. They were against it. They wanted it to be left like that.
No. But listen, why are we here? Are we here because we're afraid of Soko? I mean, look, I just want to say, my colleagues dealt the charges that we're afraid of Soko and SARS is stupidness. Throw that through the window. We're not here because of that. We're here because the country is at the place that it is at, where we should have an election, because the people of Guyana lost confidence in their executive government. How do we know that? Because a person who was vested, the majority of people in the parliament who have the mandate of the people of Guyana, because that's who we go in parliament to represent, the people of Guyana. The majority of the people in there said they have no confidence in this government. They said they have no confidence in this government because the government has not provided services, because the government has kicked people out of jobs, because the government has destroyed the lives of people. That's why we do not trust them. So that is why we are where we're at. So whoever say we want these elections, or we desperately need elections because we're afraid and so on, we desperately need elections because the people of Guyana no longer have confidence and faith and trust in their executive government. And yes, I would say that we are afraid, and the people of Guyana are afraid, that this government put their hands on oil money. We are afraid of it. We're terrified that they're going to squander it, that they won't know how to use it. I bring to your attention the fact that the PPP ran this country successfully. We had 8 years of consecutive growth without any oil. So we don't need oil to bring success to the lives of the people of Guyana. But we are afraid that this cabal will take that oil money, as they have done with the $18 million. They will stash it, they will thief it, they will hide it, and they will be incapable of formulating policies like the Prime Minister spoke about, that will bring benefit to the lives of the people of this country.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining me in this first half of the discussion with respect to what's happening in Guyana politically and where we go on March 22nd, 2019. We have just about under an hour. I think we have 55 minutes left before the government is officially illegal, and I know there are going to be other politicians from your party who are going to be having discussions with respect to what this means. What do we do? Where do we go from here over the next hour or so? Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you very much for viewers tuning in. We'll have more discussions for you on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
Oh, okay. The party has issued a formal message, and so I just wish to endorse what we have issued from the party. And that message is to wish all Guyanese a happy Holi, especially the Hindus, who, for them, this festival has a special religious significance. For the others, it's more part of our national festival, and we're so pleased that everyone is enjoying it. I know that most people, Guyanese, now are very worried about what will happen after midnight tonight. And they've heard us before. I do not want to politicize the event and also the festival, because it's one of bringing people together. But we're really at a crossroad in Guyana, and we cannot ignore what will happen tomorrow. And tomorrow, unfortunately, we will go into have an illegal government and go into unconstitutional territory, and largely because of the intransigence of the government and their refusal to respect our constitution and rule of law. And this is not good for any society or for all the people of Guyana, not just PPP supporters. So we have a duty as Hindus in the scriptures. We are supposed to fight against evil or those who try to harm society. And I don't think just as Hindus, but all Guyanese. And therefore, we will continue to wage that struggle.
Thank you very much. Happy Pagwa, happy Holi. Good morning to all my fellow celebrants here. The High Commissioner was very kind and very detailed in telling us the very many stories associated with Pagwa and Holi in India, which has passed down across countries where the diaspora have taken up residence. And many of those stories would teach us such incredibly good lessons if we were to pay attention, that I would recommend each person goes home and internalizes what some of those stories are. This morning I'd like to touch on two of those stories. One, the overcoming of evil by good, and two, the promise of spring. I'm not going to give you the details that High Commissioner gave us, but the story of Pagwa, the story of Holi, was about a king who had 5 boons or 5 powers. Essentially, they disallowed him from, or they allowed him not to die, not to be killed. He couldn't be killed inside or outside, at daytime or nighttime, by human or by animal. And he had a son, and his son was Prahalad. And Prahalad refused the king's instructions, because of course the king with these powers became autocratic and became ever powerful and became someone that would hand down unkind and ungenerous and rules that were and effectively became bad government rules. And his son Prahalad refused to follow him, worship him, and insisted that he was going to continue to worship his god Krishna, and that he would continue to follow Krishna, because for him Krishna represented goodness and prosperity and success and kindness. And the king, the evil ruler, tried many ways to get Prahalad removed, to get him killed even, and he was unsuccessful. And Prahalad refused to allow his resolve to be interfered with, to follow goodness and light. But one night, the king's evil sister, Holika, who couldn't apparently perish by fire, put Prahalad in her lap and took him onto a pyre, and she cloaked herself with a fireproof shield. And she thought she would kill Prahalad, and that didn't happen, because somehow or the other, because goodness always overcomes evil, somehow or the other the cloak went to Prahalad, and he was saved and she perished. And that's the story of Holika. All across Guyana last night, people were burning Holika, burning pyres that represented Holika. And so we saw there how Prahalad, by insisting to follow good will always prevail over evil, he prevailed. And then at the same time, simultaneously, the king, the evil king, was killed. He perished by someone who smartly overcame the 5 boons. He didn't kill him at daylight or at evening, he killed him at dusk. He turned himself into half man and half animal, so he wasn't killed by a man or an animal. He killed him on his doorstep, so it wasn't inside or outside. And that story tells us that in the pursuit of good, there are always ways that we can overcome evil.
Welcome back, viewers. It's now 11:11. We're getting closer to that very important hour. This is Guyana in Crisis, Guyana at Crossroads. I'm Michael Young. For all of you who are joining us this evening, I have a new panel with me to continue the discussion with respect to the no confidence motion and the consequences and what happens after March 21, 2019. With me, firstly, from my right is Bishop One Edgel. He's a former Minister of Finance, as you know. We have Miss Marcy Nadir Sharma. Welcome to the program, attorney at law. We have with us Mr. Joseph Hamilton. He is a member of a parliamentarian for the People's Progressive Party Civic, and we have Mr. Christopher Ram, an attorney at law, and of course a lobbyist in many areas. Welcome to the program this evening. This is a very important hour. In a matter of minutes, less than 50 minutes, the government of Guyana will become illegal, and we're going to see a lot of things happening within our society, politically, and of course with respect to the parliament, and our socio-economic dynamics may also change over the next coming months. Let's start with opening statements. We're at the point where the life of the government has not been extended. There was no parliamentary sitting. The PPP has not agreed to extend the life of the government. Mr. Granger says, President Granger, it will be business as usual. Government will continue to function. And today in the news we heard that he is desirous of setting an elections date within the time frame set out by the Ghana Elections Commission. For all of you who are not familiar, the time frame set by the Ghana Elections Commission takes us somewhere to November 2019. Within that period of time, we hear the Carter Center as well in the news today saying that they were willing to meet and talk with the various parties with a view of having elections maybe as early as August if it's possible, or finding other alternatives to deal with the political situation in our country. Mr. Ram, let's start with you. You're all the way to my extreme right. Where are we in Guyana, and did we need to reach at this point on March 21, 2019?
Clearly we didn't need to reach this point. It was wholly avoidable. Where we are, within, as you said, within another few minutes, the government will become unlawful and unconstitutional. There's a significance about the date, 22nd, as well, because the Court of Appeal will be handing its decision on the appeal matters which started at the High Court. Now, we know that whatever the Court of Appeal decides, it's going to go to the Caribbean Court of Justice, because it's clear it's a charade, it's just continuation of a charade. But I think it's going to be psychological. It will have an impact, and the whole masquerade that is taking place will become even more obvious. They will have run out, Basil Williams and his team will have really run out of all the arguments, but I'll stop here.
Okay, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you very much. I want to go back in time to bring us forward, and several times on programs I made the point that, and up to tonight I was making it, saying to Chris, if a man says to the nation, his idol and his hero is Fox Burnham, and all of us in this country accept and recognize that Fox Burnham was a dictator, the question is, why would we think, and I'm talking to Guyanese people, that this man would govern differently? And that is the fundamental question we have to ask. And so for me, nothing that Mr. Granger does, his dictatorial instincts, his autocratic behavior, nothing surprises me, because for me, that was the principal reasons why in 2011 I supported Honorable Taran and David Granger, because my assessment of Mr. Granger. So I'm not shocked about any undemocratic or autocratic behavior of Mr. Granger, dictatorial instinct and impulses, because I read Mr. Granger rightly, and my prediction about Mr. Granger is before us today.
Mrs. Chairman.
Thanks, Michael. For me, as a young professional working in Guyana, I feel that this is kind of a dire situation. I've heard stories growing up. I would have heard stories from my parents of the struggles and the infringement on democracy prior to 1992. And of course, I would not have had any concept of understanding what that impact will have on, say, for myself and my children. And for me, at literally the 11th hour, because we are at the 11th hour, Guyana is at the door of having an unconstitutional and illegal government with absolutely no vision or clear path or blueprint for us to follow. And that level of anxiety and uncertainty for professionals, for the working class, and for anyone in civil society who genuinely and truly want the betterment of our country, the situation as it stands is unacceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Angel.
Well, good evening to all our viewers, and I'm happy to join my colleagues in the panel. What we have currently is a political problem that requires a political solution. December 21st, successful passage of the no confidence vote created history in Guyana. If we pretend that it didn't happen, we are deceiving ourselves. That night, there was no more room for infantile political behavior. It demanded mature statesmanship. Barajabio led the charge by saying, this is not a time for us to think about winning and losing. It's a time of how we could talk about the future. I want to speak with President Granger. Let us engage. All that has happened is that over these 90 days, the undemocratic character and credentials of the PNC have been an open display, full display. The abuse of process, the misuse of the courts, the psychological warfare that has been designed to harm the people of Guyana, and this high level of deception coupled with the duplicity of this administration, I could have never imagined it in my lifetime. But Michael, as we go towards midnight, I would want to be in a mode for solutions. I would say to President Granger, wherever you are, pick up the phone and call Barajadu, you know his number. This requires a political solution. Why put this country through this? If you have to get on your knees, get on your knees. That is when you show that you are a true leader, when you sacrifice self for the benefit of others. What you're doing to this country is feeding your ego and damaging our character in the eyes of the whole world. I'll stop here for now.
Mr. Ram, you've been severely criticized from several standpoints for moving to the courts, taking action, speaking out against the posture of the government and some of the decisions they've taken legally. Mr. Granger says it will be business as usual on the 22nd of March 2019. How would you respond to that, and what would you say to people at home who think that the PPP is driving fear and is creating, manufacturing a controversy that in fact the government will remain government for as long as there is no elections forthcoming?
Mr. Granger is clearly being delusional. How can he not see this? How he has, yes, he has an attorney general. He must know. He's following the press. He's got all his advisors. This is set out in plain English in our constitution. There's no issue. He himself recognized it. I think it was day after the vote. His prime minister, you know, the man of words, he said, oh, it was a triumph of democracy or something to that effect. So it is this, what we are. We play games. It's time we ourselves get serious. We have to deal with this problem. To suggest, as Bishop is suggesting, oh, sit down and talk, they don't, Greta does not want to sit down and talk. Jagdeo called on him on the, let's talk. I don't want to, we shouldn't be spending too much time on the past though.
Yes.
Because we are now,
yes,
and we are facing an unconstitutional government. You're facing a usurper, you're facing a trespasser. When you use the language that the Nagubutu of the PPP in 2014, when there was no vote of no confidence, there was a motion of no confidence that didn't go. He described them as renegades. Now, this is a very serious moment. We have very few parallels in the world. But let me tell you something. We are facing one, Joseph Kabila, in the Congo. Similar kind of thing, where he decided he played games with the Independent Elections Commission, delayed elections, and then manipulated the elections. And you know where we are now? The the president, the vice president, and the advisor to the president of the commission are now prohibited from entering the United States. Action has been taken against them. That was reported today. We have to start talking about how we deal with an unlawful government. Look, if I've said this, and you said I've been taking a lot of, I've been around the place on this. You look at governments that have taken this kind of action, they curse their country. Whether you're talking about Uganda, Ghana, Nigeria, Fiji, Pakistan, those countries, even our own Grenada, when the army chief, Hudson, decided that he was going to kill Bishop. Look at what they have done. Now we've got the Congo. So we've got, as I am speaking as a citizen, you guys are mostly politicians. I am saying it's time that we start taking some action. Up to now, no date has been set. It's either the tail is wagging the dog, and the tail being GCOM, wagging the dog, Granger and his administration, or it's simple collusion and pulling wool over people's eyes. You know, sometimes when you remove the wool, you may see a wolf, and that's what we're facing. We've got to start saying all this nonsense about house-to-house registration. We are not participating in that. We should boycott. I personally will call for a boycott of any house-to-house registration, and I hope that Guyanese see the need for that type of thing. We cannot be led by a man who has been handpicked, improperly picked, and in my view still picked against the tenor of the Constitution and the practice of appointing a GCOM chairman. Right. We've got to get serious.
Michael, if I can just cast a few words in relation to GCOM. I may have made this point sometime last week at another forum where on the 21st of December, you had a no confidence motion successfully passed. One would expect that come the 22nd of December, the Guyana Elections Commission and its secretariat would have said, okay team, come together. There's a no confidence motion. Constitution says we must have elections in 90 days, so let me see your work plan. What do we need?
Master, can I interrupt you? No. I wanted to point out, they really knew on the 14th of November,
yes,
they knew that the no confidence motion was on the table.
Okay, well, I'm taking it from the point of the 21st of December. That when it was completed, successfully done. At the 14th, you had speculation. The 21st, done deal. No ifs and
but you prepare for speculation too.
But the reality is, here you have the Elections Commission, who had constructive notice, right? Let's say they weren't formally notified. that elections are going to be held or should be held in 90 days. Now this, again, you just completed local government elections in November, less than a month, well, just about a month after local government elections. So you had this no confidence motion successfully passed. One would think you would have had your work plan, you would have been expecting that call that says, GCOM, what do you need? We need to hold an election. That didn't happen. Notwithstanding all of that, you had local government elections completed on a list that none of the political parties who contested objected to. And I raised this only, and I may be jumping the gun, but I raised it because in the last 24 hours, there have been several issues arising in the press, at least that has come to my attention with relation to the list not being proper because, one, there were dead people on the list. Yes. That's an old issue, right? But the new one was, okay, overseas Guyanese should not be on the list. Well, just so that the Guyanese community in Guyana and outside of Guyana knows, Article 159 of the Constitution says that if you are a Guyanese or a Commonwealth citizen living in this country for 1 year, you are entitled to vote. You just cannot wake up one morning as a commission and say, well, not because I've not been, Marcia hasn't been in the country for 6 months means that she should be taken off the list because she shouldn't be allowed to vote. What nonsense is that?
Okay. Thank you very much.
There's an important point that I want to make, Michael, following up from both what Chris and Marcy were saying. The leader of the opposition has already offered to President Granger to avert the crisis that we are about to face at midnight. He says, I can give you up to April 30th, when the life of the current list ends. So the PPPC, through its leader, the leader of the opposition, said to Granger, 90 days, you have to have an elections and no confidence motion. GCOM with all of the pussyfooting, sorry to use such a word at this hour of the night.
You know I don't like that kind of language.
GCOM with all of the fandangling, a better word, GCOM with all of the fandangling and not preparing. We could have had an election from the time we met with President Granger, March 4th, we could have had the ship on the road. It takes 50 days. 2 weeks notice for nominations day and 32 days after nomination day for election day. April 29th could have been election day and we didn't have a crisis tonight. But you know what is playing out here tonight? This is exactly what would have happened if this government had gone to 2020. They are not prepared to give up power because democracy is not something that the PNC believes in. They got into power through a fluke with the help of Nagamutu and Ramjatan and others. Just like they did in 1964 with the coalition. They don't need a coalition anymore. We are there, and the language is you don't be in power and give up power.
Okay.
So this is an attempt to ensure that they stay in power as long as is possible, and democracy is not on their mind. Well, I have serious problems with
obviously, Bishop Vigil and panel, the people of Guyana have a very important role to play. After March 21 expires in another half an hour, we go into March 22. What should people do? How should people demonstrate their frustration with the government? How should people respond to an illegal government? Mr. Hamilton, you have permanent secretaries, you have public officials who are going to be asked to sign checks and to approve this and to be part of the normal workings of government. How should they respond to that? And what are the likely consequences for their actions when they say to a minister of state, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do this, or this is not allowed, or I will not sign this? What should they do? Let's talk about that within the next half an hour.
Well, the thing is, for citizens who are citizens generally, like Citizen Christopher Ram, is that this country belongs to you like it belongs to Granger and his cabal. And therefore, whatever action you can take in your own simple way, there are all kinds of action, picketing, petition, all kinds of different actions, not recognizing, important for communities, not recognizing these illegal ministers when they turn up for some reason or the other in your community to say they're coming as minister to speak on something. And you have to make them uncomfortable. And of course, the other issue is call on the international community to take the necessary action that they have taken on other countries who exhibited the similar behavior. Ram just indicated what to the report coming out of what the US they have done. For the People's Progressive Party Civic, the leader, he has already indicated and he has already cautioned public officers to be careful at this time dealing with this illegal government. So it was for them to deal with the government, protecting themselves. That is important. They have to do.
If I can give some guidance here, Joe, I would say to all permanent secretaries, heads of budget agencies, REOs, and so on, operate your current budget. Going into your capital budget, where you are now going to execute new projects, that's a no-no. That is a no-no. Your air condition got to work, it got to be maintained. The staff must be able to get water when they go to work. They must have stationery to carry out government services. Salaries must be paid. Execute your current budget. But the capital budget, which requires procurement and approval of cabinet and no objection and all of the rest of it, if you participate with this illegal ministerial plenary that they're now calling themselves because of some fear and all the rest of it, you could be putting yourself at odds with the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act. So I would say to everybody, pick up the FMAA tomorrow morning, start reading. I would like to say to the Finance Secretary, you can come and tell us that you receive instructions from a Minister of Finances why you did what you did. You got powers under the FMAA. Every permanent secretary and every head of every budget agency gets their authority because you send them a letter. And I would expect that he starts issuing guidance to everybody tomorrow, heads of budget agencies, how we handle the finances of our country. Having said that, the position of the People's Progressive Party Civic is that nothing that we do will harm the welfare of the public servants and of the people. So people must get paid, services must be provided, people must go to the hospital and get medicines and all the rest of it. But we are not going to allow the 27 plus, their advisors and their small group of cronies who have performed a coup d'etat on this country but by not wanting to follow the Constitution, to remain in office and pilfer and do whatever they want to do in this country. Okay. The citizens must reject this in every possible manner.
Thank you, Marcia.
For me, it has to be a very difficult position for a public servant. Waking up tomorrow, going to work, and knowing that on the one hand, if possible future government is saying don't do something because your current bosses are saying it's illegal. And so it's a very difficult position to be in. But having said that, of paramount importance is ensuring that you provide a service to the citizens of Guyana. So if somebody comes into a ministry for assistance or they go to a government agency in the normal course of business, you should not refuse to help a citizen that comes to your door. But to add to what Bishop is saying, the power of the pen is a mighty weapon. If you are asked to do something that you do not agree with, that you feel may compromise your integrity, may compromise your ethics, or may compromise your professional conduct, put it in writing. Because at the end of the day, if anyone were to say that Jane and John did not carry out their job, their functions, and acted subordinate to our instructions, there will be repercussions. And let me say, there will always be repercussions for any action taken. So whether you write or you don't write, there's a repercussion. The question that has to be on the mind of every public servant when they reach that situation is, what can I live with? What are the consequences that I can live with? But we would urge you to make sure that if you are comfortable, if you feel something is unlawful, and it will be unlawful when it comes to new projects, current budgets you continue to work with, put it in writing. Express your concerns in writing to your supervisor. It's the little things that you can do that can help build the momentum.
Mr. Ram, can citizens challenge the government in their actions in court from tomorrow?
I don't want to answer that. First of all, I think people like you got to stop talking about President Granger and Minister of Finance.
When you say people, you mean media operators and so.
The media. So this is the rule. I don't agree with Marcia. I think you're talking to senior public officers.
Yes.
You're talking about a clerk of the National Assembly.
Yes.
He has been alerted, I know that. The Secretary of the Treasury can't be dumb, he can't be blind. He must know that this is a change of the constitutional and legal order. He can't behave like things are normal. He should not take any instructions from any minister. The ministers are squatters. He ought not to do that. There is a budget. The accounting officer under the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act is the accounting officer. The problem that comes in is when you have to have warrants because the money hasn't already been issued. That's where the problem
That's at a different level, Chris.
I know that, but is that level we're talking about? I'm not talking about the junior civil servant. We're talking about the accounting, it's the accounting officers who are held responsible under the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act. I believe in the court. Look, when Ian Smith overthrew the 1961 Constitution of Southern Rhodesia and imposed another constitution in 1965, you know what the judges said? We swore to uphold the 1961 Constitution, and there was resignation among the judges. That's the kind of determination and steel we need.
And struggle.
That's what we need. Now, I have written publicly, all these people, the head of the army, ought to have sought legal opinion. The clerk of the National Assembly ought to have sought legal opinion. Auditor General, the accounting general.
Accountant General.
Accountant General. And the Finance Secretary. All those people have a crucial role. This is not a game. You're talking about $300 billion of public money. And the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act 49 and 85 make it very clear that if you spend money that ought not to be spent, you will be held responsible.
Personally responsible.
So this is serious stuff, chap. This is why we're here tonight.
Yes.
This has hardly ever happened. The only places I could think of where an existing and incumbent has overthrown the constitutional order is Ian Smith in Southern Rhodesia and Joseph Kabila in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And we see the consequences of those things.
So Chris, let me just give an example of what we're talking about. If a minister comes to you and say he wants to go into Region 9, arrange for a plane flight, and you sign off on that plane flight, you're going to be held responsible.
Absolutely.
But he's not a minister tomorrow.
Yes.
If a minister comes to you and says he would like to be able to buy this and he wants money to travel overseas, he's not a minister.
Should people do business with the government? That is a
the contractors and suppliers should not be getting engaged, because if you partner with an illegality, you are performing that illegality as well. And people need to understand that.
I don't think we should get into too much of technicality.
Yes.
I believe contracts like those are voidable. They're not void. You have a budget vote. If the officers carry out something within their power, there is no reason why they can't do it.
It's a gray area, definitely.
Well, let's address one other issue that occurred today in the news, since we're still at today, 11:39, we're getting closer to that time. The police commissioner issued a statement today in which the police commissioner said to the public that he wants calm to be maintained tomorrow, that there is some word in the street that there is going to be some disruption in the public tomorrow. Somehow, when there is this protest that is being organized by the People's Progressive Party Civic, a peaceful protest, his statement today raised a lot of eyebrows because it seems as though he may be anticipating some disorder tomorrow. How would you respond to that, Mr.
I think the police commissioner, I read the statement, overstepped his bounds. Firstly, he created alarm when there is no alarm and should be no alarm. Secondly, he was interpreting the Constitution, and that is not his role, because he was making a point that the case is not fully heard. Yes, he was saying that we still have to wait on the outcome of the appeal court judgment on Friday. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? That is nonsense. It is nonsense. That is not the role of the police commissioner. Secondly,
is that worrying though?
Yeah,
the fact that on the eve of a government becoming illegal, a senior person in no less of a person, the police commissioner, is telling people that you should do this and not do this.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's worrying and it's an alarm. Second one, and public will know also, if you're not informed in the moment, you should know that all the police officers and security people are in line. So the government is creating an alarm when they're the ones, I mean...
No, the police commissioner.
The police commissioner, no, but the police commissioner, I suspect, would have been directed politically. The fact that yesterday, all officers.
Nuremberg, he has to accept responsibility for his own actions.
No, but I'm hearing you, Chris, but I don't think the police commissioner should recognize, and all these senior officers, that now you can go to The Hague, and anymore you come tell us that this was Ramjatan tell you this or that. You were held personally accountable. So I read the statement. The police commissioner, as I said, overstepped his bound. The police commissioner was speaking about legal matters that he should not at all be speaking about. Secondly, he is creating alarm in the country when there should be no alarm. Thirdly, the People's Progressive Party Civic has always demonstrated, picketed, and it has always been peaceful. If he wants to see who will create mayhem, the history is there. First one. Secondly, Mr. Ramjatan at one of his meetings, the same nonsense, he went and that he has information that the People's Progressive Party Civic, imagine the stupidity. We would dress people in green shirts. That is what he said.
You don't need to imagine stupidity with Ramjatan.
That his information is that we are going to dress people in green shirts and have them run down the streets of the Georgetown, create mayhem, and we can film it so we could show the international community.
That's mischievous.
I mean,
it's dangerous.
It's dangerous. This is a public security minister saying that to people at the meeting that he spoke at yesterday, these outreach meetings. So you have I suspect the police commissioner is taking a cue from his boss up to midnight tonight. That something is going to happen. What is going to happen is that at midnight the government becomes illegal. And that's for sure.
And as we get closer to that point, I want us to have the last 50 minutes. I want us to focus on how do we move away from this crisis within the next day, next couple of weeks. What you would suggest as a pathway, averting this entire crisis. But what I want to do at this point in time, I want to alert persons that if you want to be part of the struggle with the People's Progressive Party, Civic, and all of the other civil organizations that have taken the position that the government will become illegal from the 22nd of March 2019, you can go to social media and demonstrate your protest by changing your profile picture at 12:01 to a black photo, a blank photo, nothing is there. Your background photo can also be changed, and you can do this very same thing on Instagram and all of the other portfolios, social media portfolios, it's simply black. It's a form of protest, a form of joining the solidarity with the party. There's a status that you'll see on the People's Progressive Party Civic page that you could also take, and you can place that on your profile. It reads, this is a dark day for Guyana. Our government is now illegal, and they have effectively executed a coup d'etat by blatantly violating the Constitution. Our jobs, investments, rights, and freedom are now at risk. Ministerial and presidential decisions and orders are now illegal. Join the protest for our democracy. You can find that on the People's Progressive Party Civic page. You can also take your own action tomorrow by joining the People's Progressive Party Civic protest that they're going to have from 10 a.m. I understand outside the assembly point is going to be Red House. They're going to be picketing the Ghana Elections Commission and calling for early elections. And you can also demonstrate in your own way on your social media and any other legal means. Of course, I want to stress that your frustration with the government. I want to stress legal action. Now let's see what how we can find a way forward within the next 15 minutes. Mr. Ram, where do we go from here? How do we avert this crisis? As simple as you can put it.
Quite frankly, it's unrealistic. This is not for us. This is Granger and his people in the APNU, AFC, and in GCOM. He's got to take leadership. He has been noted in this instance for the complete absence of leadership. And we're not talking about the period when he spends out of the country because of health issues. We're sympathetic. But he has shown no leadership whatsoever. Don't ask us. I think what you should do is ask what we as citizens must do. Now, and you know, I go back to the Congo. It's a Catholic church, it's civil society, and some individuals who brought it about. And when you bring that kind of pressure, that's all that's going to work now. Talking is not going to help. Granger did not go to G. Granger still has not named the date for elections. And that is his duty. It's not GCOM. So I come back to this, and we need to have a list. I think the chairman of GCOM should go. That man is a problem. He's a dangerous problem. He's an incompetent problem. He's dangerous. He's not being able to do what they're supposed to do. I think we should resist any attempt for house-to-house registration. Look, that is setting the stage for rigging. You'll be taking people off a list under which they could have voted had 1067 been in place. And voting is a human rights issue. It's a personal issue. We tend to forget this is about voting, not about Charandas' vote. This is about our voting in national election. This thing about house to house is a ruse. And let me tell you something, chap. Come November, as Patterson is talking about, somebody gonna get sick, somebody gonna be away, and we gonna go on and stretching it out. This is just buying time, and we need to start seeing it from now. We waited for 90 days. The PPP said, the political parties said, oh, give a chance, it can still happen. Don't wait. The pastor might talk about miracles. We as ordinary human beings got to talk about reality. And we have to, in every single way, every group, the accountants, the lawyers, the doctors, the politicians, civil society, the churches, the media, must play their part in resisting this, because if this is allowed to happen, then the soul of our country will have been taken away. And that's what we're fighting for. The soul of our country.
I think a very important point that needs to be made is that every person listening to this program wake up tomorrow with an attitude that says we reject this violation of our Constitution, and we will not allow these usurpers to continue to rule us and dictatorship to take over the country. If you find yourself as a beneficiary of this, if you find as a beneficiary of this, and you want to use your Facebook post or your popularity to apologize to this government, history would be there, and your children and your grandchildren will read about the role you played in propping up an illegality. This is not a time for Jabdio to protest Granger. This is a time for the citizens of Guyana, every citizen. This has gone beyond the PPPC. This is bigger than Charandas or Christopher Ram, the initiative to take a case to the court to move it forward. This is about every Guyanese. Silence is not an option. Silence is not an option. And you know what is damning? Is that a lot of the organizations who were at the PPP when they were in office, the churches and the NGOs and the faith-based organizations, they are zipped. Lots of them have been rewarded with national awards. So now they have become part of the elite, sophisticated group that you can't speak. They have been bridled, and their people are suffering as a result of their silence. You could imagine if New Year's Day, people who should have taken action had taken action, we would have never gotten to where we are now. It's the encouragement and the applause that is coming. You're doing well, God bless you. You're the man for Guyana, you're the divine ruler. God is with us, God bless you. If God is for you, who can be against you? And we're now 10 minutes to midnight, and the man, wherever he is, has not obeyed the Constitution, and you want me to stand up tomorrow morning and pledge to obey the laws of Guyana, which I've been doing from a child. And the man who holds the Bible and says he's going to uphold the Constitution of Guyana has violated it, and we're going to still clap and say hallelujah. It can't be hallelujah tomorrow.
But
it got to be everybody standing up against it.
If I can add to what Bishop has said too, one of the disturbing things about come 12 o'clock is we have a president and a government who has repeatedly since 2015 said to the citizens of Guyana, comply with the law, obey the law, pay your taxes according to the law, do everything in accordance with the law, follow as simple as the traffic rules. And here you have a government led by a president who are refusing to comply with the supreme law of the land. How is that government going to, well, I can't, if I were to take Chris's position, how can those persons expect that the normal man on the road, and I hear all about everybody else at the decision-making levels, but the reality is this affects individuals from the market vendor all the way up. And if our president and government cannot obey the law, how can you expect law and order to prevail in the country come 1201?
The thing is, you know, I think Fenty last Friday said it nicely, and you know, he said that he voted for Granger, and he made a point that, you know, he's coming around to believe this man who speaks Pope-like is a really wolf. That is what he said, basically. And so the question is, moving forward, you have a president up to midnight who double speaks. You have a president who apparently has a Jekyll and Hyde personality, and I'll give you here is a man, his government failed. He returns to the country. He took 18 days to engage the opposition leader. During that period, you know what is his priority? Commemorating a stamp to a minister's dead aunt. That is what happened in that. That was the thing, you know, not the fact that his government failed. So I take the point Chris is making, and I'm getting there. That something isn't functioning there. And you have, what is sad in all of this, you have people who would tell you they fought for democracy, like the Nakamutus and the Rupert Rupnerines and all the old cabal. You have the WPA cabal, Chris Good Friends.
Not anymore.
Clive Thomas and all of these guys. These people, the end of their political career would be where they prop up and enable a dictatorship. These are people who fought against this that they have now become part of. And all is it is because, as Bishop said, they have gotten their brown bags and they have gotten their status and that kind of thing. So for us, let me say this also to the supporters of the APNU AFC, because some of the people got this view that suffering will only happen with PPP people. The situation we find ourselves in, the country will suffer. That includes every person regardless who you voted for. And Marcy is making the point. The market vendor, the man who brings in, when the US, the exchange rate escalates to 230, the man got to bring in his stuff. And you got to go and buy it. Right away, you're affected. Every person. So some people who continue to gloat and to glee and to write all kind of foolishness, saluting Mr. Granger up to this moment, that he apparently is Alpha and Omega, you're going to understand very shortly that the action that you're propped up, how it will affect you personally and individually in your family.
Okay. And
Michael, I want to make a suggestion. I want to challenge all the honorable men and women of Guyana. Those who receive silk this year, those who receive national awards, turn them in back by 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon as a form of protest. Senior government functionaries who have been politically appointed on boards and all the rest of it, and you don't agree with what's going on, send in your resignation by 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Once that starts happening, this government is in trouble. Let the honorable, noble men and women of this country who with glee stood up and had all their things pinned on them and accolades received, even after no confidence motion, we can't have this. Turn it in by 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, start sending it in back, put it on the social media, let the world know you are rejecting this government, you're not going to accept anything from them, and let them face the consequences.
Now, I want to find out just briefly, we have about 4 minutes, we have left or so until midnight. Remember, at 12 we're urging persons to change their photos and Facebook and Instagram to black as a form of protest and to join the struggle. I want to ask you, Mr. Ram, integrity in government is extremely important, and one of the things that Mr. Granger entered office on one of the heights was the fact that his hands were clean supposedly at that point in time, and he had promised good governance. He had promised to deliver Guyana from the hands of the PPP and to give us governance that we've never seen before in the history of our country.
No, but he's right in this. Even though it's a negative, a governance that we never saw before.
Has Mr. Granger delivered for you as someone who has been in public life for a long time?
Clearly, look, this is no time for holiday. He has violated his oath to protect and preserve the Constitution. That alone. And so he has no moral authority at this stage. Forget integrity. You know, sheep come in all form, or wolves come in all form. So what I would like to see now, the bishop talked about giving up. I know lawyers, none of them are going to do that. They will say they got it when he was illegal, that he was legal. And that's part of the problem of our society. We don't have that level. But I would also like to see citizens and organization, the churches, the international community. So, you know, the Catholic Church, for example, they have to stand up. This is their flock. This is everything I keep saying.
But President, it's changing dynamic. It's not just the Catholic Church. It's the evangelical Pentecostal church that is propping this thing up. That needs to address it.
And they need to be called out. This, to the extent that they enable this kind of conduct, they are as guilty. It's as simple as that.
Okay, and as well as a form of protest, since we're just about 11:59, 11:58, it's 11:59 in some places, depending on what your watch is saying and where you are. At 12, we're going to observe our screen go completely into black as a form of protest, and that's going to usher in a day that many young people would have never thought would have happened in their lifetime, to be living in a country where your government is unconstitutional and illegal, but continues to flout themselves as though though they have each and every single power that they had when they entered office. So it's just about 1 minute, and I don't know what are we going to do over. It's a very serious time, so I think persons at home should use this period to reflect on the way forward for Guyana, what you're going to do.
And tomorrow nobody should refer to the president as President Granger. It should be Mr. Granger.
And they're looking. I told one.
And all the ministers, not honorable ministers.
I'm waiting up to see what your editorial and your newspapers is going to say.
We'll all be waiting, and we'll be waiting for
because the moment you continue to recognize that, they continue to go.
Okay, so we're going to wait until that clock strikes 12, but it has about 30 seconds or so more as a form of protest, and we're going to observe the screen go black. It's 12. Welcome back, and we're now back with you. It's now 12. It's March 22nd, 2019. The government is now illegal. Martin Carter wrote, these are the dark days. We are now into that period. Mr. Ram, let me start with you. For the next 10 minutes, let's talk about the role of young people. Many young people believe that they have a very important role to play, but they're not given the opportunity to say what they want, to demonstrate how they want, and to make the changes. Could this event in our history be used as a watershed moment for young people in our country to rise up, using that word legally too, and to be part of a struggle that can really change the democratic dynamics of our country for years to come?
Well, Michael, I think the future belongs to our children and our children's children. There's no question about that. I don't think, I have to say this as a criticism, the young people are not recognizing some of the dangers we face. They don't play their part. Yes, I think in the climate change you see a lot of young people taking, but they seem to feel that, look, politics is dirty and you should shun politicians. Well, it's because you shun politicians that we're in this mess we're in. We need to have some serious laws that deal with political parties. We don't have political parties legislation. We don't have, our campaign financing laws are set out in our representation is openly violated, like how Article 155 was violated. Young people need to come forward. It's not for people like me in the mid-70s to be speaking on behalf of young people. I can't. In fact, maybe this panel might have had some younger person to reflect and project the views of youths. We can't think for them. They have to think for themselves.
I don't necessarily. Sorry, I need to. No, I need to take umbrage a bit to what you said. only because I don't agree that young people don't step up. I think young people believe in idealism because they are ideal and they have not had some of the experiences that you may have had. Their expectations of what things should be and how politicians should act is what guides their thought process. But young people have been very active prior, even up to in the 2015 election, were very active on social media. They played an important role in actually voting in the 2015 election. So I actually disagree with you. Young people have a voice. They may not use the regular norms. They use social media, but you can take it a step further. You can reach out to, I believe, the PYO and the PPP or the civic component, or you can even take, again, letter writing, write to the diplomatic missions, write to the governments, write anyone you
to
believe.
Those protests. That's
Well, that too, but doesn't mean that if somebody doesn't show up means that they're not part of the struggle for whatever reason. So you can't dismiss, the young people.
No, I'm saying they have a lot. Look, when we were really on the threat, it's Bishop's High School and St. Stanislaus who led some of the protests. It's not happening now. We may want, yes, the medium has changed, but they're still not dealing with it as frontally as they should. We had some meetings the other day, Raymond Gaskin, everybody was over 60. You don't have...
Joe Hamilton made a point a little earlier that Granger saw Burnham as his hero. But Granger must understand that what obtains today did not obtain at Burnham. Everybody is a broadcaster. Once you have a cell phone, you are a broadcaster.
With data, of course.
With data. And today, as the day breaks, every youth that Chris was talking about and Marcy's in defense of, you got a cell phone, you can do something and protest. Your voice can be heard in the United States of America, in the State Department. Your voice can be heard in the House of Lords and in the House of Commons in the United Kingdom. Your voice can be heard in Brussels at the European Union's parliament. Get to your Facebook page. You know to do your thing.
Set up a hashtag.
You know to do your thing. Let me tell you something.
Well,
if you think by being silent you will get by while others get victimized, that is where the problem is. Because bullies need somebody to stand up to them, and in Guyana it mustn't just be one person, it must be all of us.
Well, gentlemen and lady, I'm so sorry, right? But we're out of time. This has been a very good discussion. I enjoyed. It's sad to say that I enjoyed the discussion because the discussion was a very serious one, and the tone it has set the tone for many things to come. But I thank you very much for joining me. I look forward to having more discussions, not necessarily on topics like these, but other things constitutional and national within Guyana. And thank you very much, viewers. We have another round of panel discussions for you. Do stay with us. It's March the 22nd, 2019, and the government is unconstitutional.
All of the acts that he commits thereafter, from March 21st, the expiration of that date, from March 22nd, all of the acts that he conducts or he undertakes after that period would also be illegal. The president will have to be answerable for all of those acts, either criminally or civilly, or civil acts. He will lose all of his immunities because the immunities are conferred by the Constitution. The immunities are conferred upon a president who's been appointed and holds office legally. the president would be illegal. He cannot then claim entitlement to the immunities that he enjoys at this time. So people can take legal action against him now or in the future when the government changes. We have made it clear that, and I want to say this to all the PPP supporters and well-wishers, etc., we are very different than the PNC. We will not burn a single building in the city as they did, or anywhere in the country. We will not damage public infrastructure. We will not beat people on the streets or harass them. We will not do anything that will harm our public servants or policemen or soldiers or doctors or teachers from going about their business of keeping our country going on a daily basis. We will not do anything to harm them doing that. That our target will be narrowly focused on the illegal president, the illegal prime minister, and the illegal ministers. That is where we will focus on them, not to pursue violence against them, because we abhor that, but to make life very, very uncomfortable for them who are occupying offices illegally, who have been violating our Constitution, who now for their own self-interest will push our country into a crisis, who will which may have implications for territorial integrity. And President Granger, you're putting our country at risk. It's not a PPP, you are. You're putting our country at risk for even our territorial integrity because you want to hang on to power. That's the target, and not for violence, but making life very uncomfortable for them. And that is why we are going to seek international condemnation of this government. We have already sought that. We have written to several organizations arguing for non-recognition of this government after March 22nd. We will seek sanctions against those individuals, and including in those, the chairman and the 3 commissioners at GCOM who were in a plot with the government to delay the elections and to violate the Constitution. We will seek sanctions against those individuals.
Guyana in crisis. Welcome and good morning to all of you wherever you're joining us from. It is indeed a dark day for this country, Guyana, and all its people. For the first time in our history, we have an illegal government. We have a government that has lost its mandate. And with me tonight, I'm your host, Roma Rupnarain. With me is no other than to my extreme right, Chief Whip and Executive Member of the PPC, Ms. Gil Teixeira, ex-member as well of the PPC, Mr. Vikram Bharat, who is also MP. We have Mr. Yu Todd from the Civic Component to my extreme right, and we also have Ms. Suzanne Rodriguez, who is an entrepreneur, and together they will be bringing some insightful points over the course of this program. Now, I'll want to put out the question immediately, and we could start with Ms. Teixeira. Now, bearing in mind that we are in a nation now that the government has not just lost its mandate, it is now illegal. What are the immediate implications in us moving forward today?
Well, it's 13 minutes past 12. And so we're now in a situation where the Constitution cannot guide us anymore. The laws nor the Constitution can guide us on what to do now. We're in uncharted waters. The country has slipped into a constitutional crisis. We are now in the throes of a government that has overthrown the constitution. In other words, we're in the throes of a coup. A coup d'etat has occurred in which the government itself has overthrown the constitution. And so these are very delicate times, and also times where really there's nothing to guide us. You know, it's like a boat without a rudder or without a paddle. And so very clearly what we do know is that the government is unconstitutional. It is, the timeline of the 3 months has come to an end as of midnight tonight, and that it did not go for an extension in the parliament for the 2/3 majority to extend its life and to allow elections to be held past that date. So that at this point the president is in office, but he is squatting in office. He has usurped the constitution. He's a squatter. So are all the ministers squatting in office. So you have a government that's there, but it's unconstitutional. You have a situation where the constitution cloaks the cabinet, the president, the ministers. They cloak them with authority and with powers, and all those have now ended as of midnight. So the president is, Mr. Granger is there, but he has no immunities whatsoever anymore, nor do the ministers have, as one area that we know from the constitution is now gone. And so that's why we say we have an unconstitutional, illegal, unlawful government right now in our country.
Now, I've heard in some sections the notion being peddled that the deadline is not really to this midnight tonight, but rather on the 22nd, owing to the fact that yesterday was a national holiday, being Pagua. Now, what is your take on that before we move forward?
Maybe from the laughter and the comments of my colleagues, I think they have the answer. So maybe one of them can take that one.
If I could comment here, following on from what you would have said, the clock has been taken, and it does not exclude any day, weekends or holidays. We're dealing with each and every day that goes by. And what I would like to add to Comrade Gale's discussion, which was quite succinct, is the fact that we have just about 0.004% of the population trying to control 99.006% of the population. They've hijacked the economy, and they've thrown democracy out of the window. They've trampled all over the constitution, and they're now deciding our fate for us, when it should be the other way around. And what I want to alert all Guyanese to is the fact that we cannot stand for this. This is a crisis. It is real. It is not perceived. It is a real crisis. Do not be misguided by the fact that because we are calm and we seem to be very law-abiding, that is because that is how we are as a people. And don't let the politicians who are squatting in government take advantage of that. So we have to agitate, and we have to stand up for our rights. The fact of the matter is that if they are allowed to continue in this manner, they will emerge into a full-blown dictatorship. And with that, our rights and liberties will be removed. We'll go back into a state-controlled environment, which is not good for us. When you talk about property rights, you talk about freedom of assembly, association, you talk about
the right
victimization,
to vote, the first one that's
right
gone.
to vote. I mean, there's so many implications that are facing us, and we have to arrest the situation now, minute by minute, not day by day, minute by minute. So from now onwards, we have to start engaging in social action, peaceful, across Guyana, across the length and breadth of this country. Each and every citizen must get up and do whatever is legal and within their legal right to show this government that they are squatting and they need to remove themselves from office and to engage in a process that we can move towards elections. One of the things I want to add, because I want my other colleagues to also contribute, is the fact that the PNC believes in a zero-sum game. They don't believe in compromise. They don't believe in dialogue. And for democracy to work, you must have dialogue. You must have compromise. It there must be reciprocity in negotiation and dialogue. And this administration, or the failure of this administration, is the fact that they've never ever adhered to good values and principles, and we've worked tirelessly to get to the point where we are today. History has shown that the PPP has always been on the right side, even in opposition during the 28 years, with the fact that we've committed to critical support, and now being a responsible opposition. Had it not been for this opposition, we would have been further down the tubes in terms of our democratic process. We cannot allow it to slip away. We need to arrest it now.
Now, following on from what Mr. Todd said, Vikram, you would have been in the National Assembly, the zero-sum game that he speaks about with the APNU AFC. I think if we do check back the records, even the members inside of APNU have consistently complained of being sidelined and ignored by the PNC. I think the WPA and so forth would have been complaining that they have zero input. That is just basically a dictatorship that was emerging. So this really should not come. You know, some persons would have been saying this. In fact, the opposition leader would have been saying this for several years now, warning the nation.
You're indeed right, Romel. First, let me say good morning to our viewers out there, and to say that Guyana is in a crisis. We have today, Friday, March 22nd, marks Guyana having an illegal government, a government who has no right to be in office anymore. You're correct. There was a successful no confidence motion in Parliament. And the mere fact of that motion passing through Parliament required a member from the government side to vote for the People's Progressive Party motion. And you're on the ball when you said that the other parties, besides from the PNC, they had no say, or they had no say within the coalition. And we have heard that over and over from Charandas and many others on the government benches, especially the backbenchers, saying that the manner in which they were treated and they have no representation, and their voices are not really being heard, and issues that they put forward coming from their constituencies are not properly represented. And this would have led to the frustration from Charandas and a few others in the backbench of the government that led to the successful passage of the no confidence motion. I want to say that because the government is, or I should say the APNU AFC, because we no longer have a government, they were trying to portray this image that it was the People's Progressive Party that took this no confidence motion to Parliament. But we want to say clearly that it was 63% of the Guyanese people who took that no confidence motion to Parliament. The People's Progressive Party represents almost 2/3 of the population in this country. And I would like to think that today, Friday, 22nd of March, we represent maybe 95 or 96, or as my comrade mentioned, 99.006% of the population tonight. Because no single Guyanese should be proud of the APNU AFC action. As a matter of fact, we are a disgraced nation presently, not only in CARICOM, but the entire Commonwealth. This has never happened before in the entire Commonwealth. That a no confidence motion was passed against a government that refused to act by the Constitution. And that is, our Constitution is simple and clear as daylight. You resign, you remain only to call elections, only for the purpose of election within 90 days. It's clear as daylight.
Now, Suzanne, you are an very active youth member of the PPC. You would have been, and you are on the ground almost every single day. Now, you would have interacted with a lot of young people. And we all know that the APNU AFC would have played on these young people leading up to the last elections, would have led them along a path, believing that, you know what, they will uphold democratic principles as they seek to move the country forward. Now, we have seen a complete U-turn now. Have youths been you've been getting that feedback now that persons have recognized this and they're extremely disappointed, including supporters, because I know you would have come across, you would have interacted with supporters and former supporters of the APNU AFC. What have they been telling you?
Good morning, Romel. Good morning, viewers. Let me just say, following up on the discussion so far, I believe that the erosion in our democracy began in 2017 with the unilateral appointment of the GCOM chairman. I think since then, all Guyanese should have stood up and said, no way, this has never happened in the history of our country, and we should never have let it happen. Because it goes against the very fabric. I think the APNU AFC coalition planned since then to interfere in our elections or to delay it somehow. So that happened. I believe we would have found ourselves here either way, whether it's in 2019 or 2020. I think we would have been in trouble with calling elections on time since then. And I want to urge the viewers to recognize that this is not a political issue. It is not a PPP issue. This is something that concerns all Guyanese. Our democracy concerns all Guyanese. Respect for our constitution involves all Guyanese standing up and saying, we cannot allow this to happen. Whether you are a supporter of the coalition or PPP, it doesn't matter. We are all Guyanese and we need to stand up for Guyana. Now, coming to your question about youths, like you rightly said, I've been on the ground every day for the past few months, and I've been to many places, including Sophia. I've walked the dams, I've walked in the fields, and the reception has been very good for PPP members who have walked the areas, and they're frustrated. The youths recognize that they've been duped and that there is no place for them in APNU AFC. That is clear. I see now they're trying to revive their youth arm by creating this new
front group.
Right, and it's a farce. Here they are again trying to solicit the young voters, and I think our population, our youth population, is wiser than this. They've already been fooled once, and I do not think that they're going to be fooled a second time. So I think going forward, they're really in trouble, and with allowing with pushing the country into these uncharted waters, I think they're only making it worse for themselves when elections are called.
So basically, where we're at, just to bring you up to scratch, we now have the what I should say. I can't even find. I'm at a loss to describe how I'm feeling about my country today. In what this government has basically done for Guyanese. Can you imagine the ridicule that citizens will have to go through all across the world, wherever they are located, knowing that for the first time in our history we have a government that is illegal and they brought about this constitutional crisis. Now, the implications are very, very serious for this country, and the APNU AFC would have known about it more than most, because in fact it was Mr. Granger and some of his current persons who are no longer should not be considered ministers and prime minister and so forth. They would have articulated the consequences way back before the last election, when ironically the PPPC was a legitimate government then. Today we have the situation where you have an illegitimate government, a government that lost a no confidence vote and has done everything possible to delay and stall the 90-day deadline. Now, Mr. Shearer, would you care to join us again and just, I mean, surely businesses, bilateral engagements and so forth these companies, the governments and so forth would know that this government basically has breached the Constitution. Now they would be very hesitant to enter into any arrangement of any sort.
They ought to be, because we have made it very clear that after March 21st, new contracts, new agreements, new loans, we will not recognize those. Those will come under review by us when we win the elections. And so, because they knowingly now, it is not unknown that March 21st, the government is unconstitutional. We've been telegraphing this for the last 2 months to try to get the government to comply. And so, even with the regions and the ministries, we're saying to public servants and permanent secretaries, do not obey unlawful instructions. According to the public service rules, you cannot give a public servant an instruction that is unlawful, and they're within their rights to not obey an unlawful instruction. So the public servants are not supposed to, and that's their protection, that protects them from disobeying, if they disobey, because they cannot, they're protected by the fact that they cannot, they shouldn't be given an unlawful instruction, but they should not obey an unlawful instruction. And so that's for the public servants. The same thing in the regions with new contracts, ministry going for new contracts that they've been advertising as of March 21st onwards, March 22nd, that those contracts will come under review and examination by us, because we're saying they should not be having any new contracts up to March 21st. That also goes to bilateral agreements and loan agreements and so forth, because you're putting the country in debt without the authority, without any constitutional cloak in terms of how you do these things. The Guyana is and you know, I just want to make a comment as the oldest person here. This is not easy for me. This is not easy for me to say, I wish to assure you. But you know, the 28 years we fought to restore democracy, to bring back free and fair elections. And it was extraordinarily difficult in that period. And we were alone for so long as a party. It's only by 1977-70 the wind changes a bit, and by 85 the Catholic bishop and the Anglican bishop and religious leaders come on board, blah, 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 and so on. Today, it's a much more interesting world, in that was also the period when you had dictatorships all over Latin America. So this was part of the plan for the hemisphere to have control. The world today is different. It's a world of information-based technology. Immediately something happens somewhere, you know about it. We put out a press release, within a minute it's gone into the internet, into the social media. Before, in the 28 years, a letter took 6 weeks to reach. You were dependent on newspapers and stuff like that. So these times are different times, although we're facing a completely different situation, in the sense that this is the first time a government of Guyana has overthrown the Constitution, whether as an independent nation and even in the pre-colonial times. So that, but the world is different now. Everybody's interconnected in a variety of ways. So that what happens in Georgetown now, instead of taking weeks to get a letter into Lethem and into the Rupununi and into Bartica and the Upper Mass, and within minutes, people in different villages across the interior, across Guyana, know what's going on. And I believe that's one of the power, that's the power of the people right now. It's technology is empowering our people. And so I don't think that the kind of misinformation that the government is peddling will be able to have the same kind of impact that they were successfully able to do in those 28 years, to keep a large percentage of the population almost shackled to a policy of segregation, not segregation, separation of our people. And so these are, what the government is doing is horrendous, and they must know that the Guyanese people do not accept this. We struggled in government to bring about democracy. We brought about constitutional reform, which the same PNC people agreed to. This clause in the no confidence motion was passed in the National Assembly. And because it was a constitutional amendment, it had to have 2/3 majority. So it wasn't a PPP thing that we just did it, and we never had 2/3 majority of the National Assembly as under Burnham's time. So I think that there's this terrible thing that has happened, but it's also an interesting development in terms of our evolution as a nation, because I believe firmly, as Susan said and Hugh and Vikram, that people are not buying into this. And we have to remember that 2015, see, the government came in totally ignoring an important factor. 4,526 votes difference between the PPP and the APNU AFC, right? And so they came in with 4,526 as a government, and they behaved as if they had a majority of 30,000 more or 40,000 more. 2016 local government elections, we beat them. So 2018, we beat them more. We got 63%, I think that's what you said. And so they have lost the mandate. They started to lose the mandate within a year of them. And they did nothing to rectify the situation. They came in feeling that they're powerful, they're arrogant, and they've got the power, so what? So that what has evolved right now is that our people have had 4 years of an APNU AFC coalition. And I think they've been betrayed. A lot of their supporters feel they've been betrayed by them. A lot of people who are sometimes a little bit irritated with us now recognize that the PPP still is the most reputable party to support. And so there are a number of factors now. What's emerging that's a total, I think in the end of it all, Guyana will be stronger and better. But the process to get to there is going to be difficult, because this government's going to grind in its heels, and we hope that we can put a lot of pressure on them.
Former government.
Well, former government, they are still a government there, but they are illegal. You know, so whether you say former government, they're a legal government. And that's the main thing. They don't have the constitutional background. So that I think that there are positives right now, because people are not responding to them. They have come out with all sorts of things to try to make people feel afraid of the PPP, that we're planning these things, which are total lies. Mr. Jaglio has repeatedly said at press conferences, and we have said here and the previous panelists, that we're a peaceful party. We obey the law, and we carry out lawful activities. It is our right to protest, it's our right to assemble, it's our right to associate, it's our right to speak, it's our right to vote. The immediate impact of March 21st midnight is that this government removed our right to vote at that particular time within 3 months. That's what they've done, the immediate impact. They removed our right to vote. We now have to fight to get back that right to vote, and they have to do it sooner than later.
Mr. Todd?
From Miguel, you were very clear there, but I just wanted to add to her position on the implications in and around the region. Apart from what we will see happening within the local scene, internationally there'll be some implications. We've signed on to many treaties and many regional institutions, some of which have democratic clause in it.
Exactly.
For example, UNISOR, they can activate that clause and withdraw political and economic cooperation, which can affect us.
OAS.
Right, the OAS. We have the partial scope agreement with Brazil that can be put on hold. We have CELAC. We have the Commonwealth Secretariat. We have the EU, our traditional partners. We are so interconnected that if we misbehave, we can be punished for it. And this is not the 0.004% of the people that will be punished. This is the entire population. Many of those same people may flee to different places, but majority of the people will have to remain here and face the brunt of it. So we have to be able to arrest the situation before it gets out of hand. Dictators are not self-made. They continue to push and push their way until they can consolidate. And we cannot allow this illegal government to consolidate their power. This is what they're about. This is corruption at the highest level. They're corrupted by power. They only want to hold on to power. disregarding all of our principles and values that we work tirelessly to build and to nurture, and they're going to withdraw that from us. We cannot afford to do that. So we, apart from calling on all of our citizens who are on board, who understand that these the actions of the squatting government having implications on their lives, internationally we're interconnected, and we will feel the brunt of the international environment, both from regional institutions and multilateral institutions, and we cannot allow this to continue to ferment. If it gets to a boiling point, it's going to be difficult to reverse, but we believe in the international system because it's a different dispensation now. I don't believe that members on the other side understand that it's a different dispensation, and they may not be allowed to continue like this in a protracted manner.
Now, Vikram, we have seen this, and it's in traditional PNC style. This government, or this former government, or the illegal government, they have sought to deflect blame onto the PPC for this, for their refusal to adhere to this 90-day deadline, and we've also seen them conveniently acknowledging it. They recognize it when they approach the appeals court to put a stay on it, but outside from that, they pretend that it doesn't exist. So it's a kind of the two-faced nature of these people. I mean, and we can, and I'm pretty sure in the coming days we'll see them coming up with all these manner of campaigns. We saw a recent one when they would have made a scandalous post on the social media with reference to the possibility of violence and illegal acts and so forth, right? And trying to create that sense that the PPC might be somehow responsible for it.
You're correct, Romel. As a matter of fact, the APNU UFC have been trying to blame everything and everybody other than themselves for the position that they have put to Guyana in right now. And if you listen to the message that Mr. Granger has playing on the television station and the radio stations, he contradicts himself in every single statement. Every single statement he contradicts himself, because he would read the Article 106, 6 and 7 of the Constitution, and then he would say that, okay, I will set credible election in the shortest possible time. When you are guided by the Constitution of Guyana, and it is clear. So yes, they've been blaming every single organization, every single individual other than themselves, and obviously they're trying to put the blame or throw the blame on the People's Progressive Party for putting Guyana in a situation as it is now, because we know that our constitution say that the life of the government can be extended by way of a 2/3 majority in parliament for the holding of elections. But how can we, the People's Progressive Party, go to the National Assembly and extend the life of a government indefinitely? There hasn't been a date announced. So we were saying, you let us know what date you have in mind, give us the date, and then we will decide if that date suits the Guyanese people.
I think Mr. Jab, you would have given them that, was it April 30th?
April 30th.
Yeah, which was doable.
And it was, apart from the 90 days, you had several weeks to get yourself in.
Initially, elections were supposed to, our constitutional election was supposed to be held by yesterday.
Yeah.
But we further extended that. Our General Secretary, Comrade Jagdio, further extended that to the 30th of April. Particularly because the voters list that we currently have is valid until the 30th of April. So this big cry about the voters list not being valid and people that will be disenfranchised, this is the very voters list that was praised by the chairman of GCOM, by the APNU commissioners on GCOM, and the APNU and AFC that was used to conduct the local government election just a few months ago. So the list still has a lifespan up to the 30th of April. And as Comrade Gill said, the election was doable. India would probably have close to 1 billion people that will be voting at the next election. and they can call elections in less than 50 days. They can run off an election in less than 50 days. And we are saying
the
that
Indian ballot is like this big.
and we are saying that GCOM has the capacity. They have the capacity to run off election in 50 days. That is why we said by April 30th. Now, Susan touched on a very important point, and we should not think of it lightly. In fact, it is very, very important, and it started with the illegal and unilateral appointment of the GCOM chairman.
Yeah.
From the time that happened, we should have realized that there are plans afoot to rig elections and to control GCOM, because now, as it is, the composition of GCOM is 4 PNC and 3 BPP, because the chairman of GCOM was appointed by the head of the PNC, who is Mr. David Granger. So that was the plan all along, and now he has been trying to throw the blame, as you mentioned, put the blame on other people in the organization. He's trying to put blame a little bit too on GCOM now, that okay, I will be guided by GCOM. But who are you really guided by? You're guided by the 4 persons who you're instructing. You're instructing these 4 persons, and then you're fooling the populace out there that I'll be guided by GCOM, when you're instructing them behind the closed doors, and then they come back to GCOM and they carry out your instructions or your mandate. So GCOM is a constitutional agency. GCOM cannot dictate what happens in the country. As a matter of fact, GCOM should have started preparation for election on the 22nd of December 2018, because they're guided by the Constitution, and no confidence motion was successfully passed in the National Assembly, and that is your guidance. You don't have to wait until somebody come and tell you, oh, we need to prepare for elections now. You know what happened on the 24th. Your sole responsibility, your sole job in this country is to hold credible elections, hold elections. So we might, or the APNU AFC might want to say the list is not clean, the list is not valid. We are saying that.
But how come the list only became a problem after the no confidence motion? Because not just November 12th, Vikram, not just November 12th, there were no complaints up to November 12th, but subsequent to November 12th. I think the GCOM met on November 27th. No one said it was a problem. They met sometime December before Mr. Patterson got sick. And why did it become a problem post November 12th? And only after, post the no confidence motion. So clearly we all know, I think, that the government has no intention of abiding by the 3 months. They felt they could get away with it. And the whole issue that they could usurp the Constitution, I think they felt that the High Court would have ruled in their favor.
Yes.
And the Chief Justice and the High Court must be congratulated for defending the Constitution of our country. And we hope that the Court of Appeal tomorrow will stand today actually, 22nd, will stand in defense of our Constitution and democracy in Guyana. We sincerely hope that. We know it takes a lot of courage on the judge's part, but the independence of the judiciary must be protected, and it's sacrosanct in our country. The issue too of the post March 21st, we can get up the issue of how Guyana will be treated at the international level, how we are now going to be falling out of the global embrace of democratic nations. But we also have to look at the level of Guyanese people. When a country is unstable, because once you have a situation where a government is illegal, it is not covered by the Constitution anymore, it has usurped, overthrown the Constitution, it's a coup. It means that your country is very unstable, uncertain, and that has a big impact on the business community, on investors, on farmers and everybody else, and it has a major impact on the ordinary people, because it will lead to issues of cost of living increases. It will lead to greater difficulties for the ordinary man and woman to make a living. If the businessmen are uncertain about what is the future, when will they what will happen? Should they invest? Should they expand? Should they contract? Should they send some workers home because they don't know how long this is going to happen? And so the economic impact is major. And we are already in a situation where the economy is on the decline. We're already in trouble in the economy. And so this whole issue is not just a bunch of people at the top there. Really what I think this program is about is that saving our nation, that we all love our country and love our nation, but we don't like these people. You know, we don't want Granger and them in the government anymore. We don't want them sitting in the Ministry of the Presidency, in the ministries, etc. That we want them out. And that we're calling on Guyanese not to be silent. Silence is the greatest enemy of democracy. And we learned that in the 28 years. It took us a long time to get people to join us. And so we must not be silent as a people. We must stand up to save our nation, to defend our constitution and the democracy and our democratic rights as a people. Who we vote for on election day, that's everybody's business. When you go into the booth, that's your right to choose who you wish to vote for. But it's a sacrosanct right in that it's our right to vote, and that this government has overthrown the constitution, the supreme law of our country. For what reason? To hold power, to stay in power against the wishes of the people. And that's what's at stake right now.
GCOM is just the most recent excuse. I mean, they've been trying to make excuses since the 21st of December. First it was what constitutes a majority, if it's 34 or 33. When they realized how asinine that is, they went to let's wait and see the outcome of the court case, and then now GCOM. GCOM is just the most latest excuse. We just came out of a local government election, a complicated elections, and GCOM had presiding officers and a full complement of staff trained to conduct elections, and they've dismissed everybody to train new people now. Why? That was unnecessary.
That is obvious.
And if people saw Christopher Ram's letter in the Starbuck News, I believe it was yesterday, where he had a table with the duration, the time period when elections were
Past
called.
elections.
Right. You had elections that were held within 42 days. So 90 days is not impossible, not by a long shot.
Okay.
But 90 days is the norm.
What we'll do
is the norm.
What we'll do is that we'll take a quick break for this video clip, and we'll come right back.
The British High Commissioner said that it seems as though Guyana would have to come under review. But from your perspective, what benefits do you see Guyana gaining from such sanctions?
Well, the sanctions inevitably will affect all Guyanese citizens. We will all suffer once there are sanctions. The question is who will suffer most, and whether that period of suffering, which is bound to be short, is going to have the effect of bringing about a change in government's behavior. I do believe so. Sanctions will have a short-term effect, and we all hope that the government will be wise enough to act so that the sanctions are not prolonged. Other countries in the Commonwealth have been sanctioned before for breach of democracy. I know Fiji has been sanctioned, Pakistan has been sanctioned, Zimbabwe I think has been sanctioned. And it is in the interest of Guyana to avoid these sanctions, because these sanctions could have a deleterious effect on the economy and of course the way Guyana is perceived in other countries. You know, Guyana wants to attract foreign direct investment, Guyana wants tourists to come, Guyana wants to be able to access donor funding, you know, around the world. But when it is perceived widely that Guyana is a pariah state, Guyana is an outcast, there will be less willingness on the part of donor countries to pump money into what is becoming a failed state, to pump money into a country which does not practice democratic behavior. So Guyana is bound to be the loser, even if in the short term sanctions have an economic impact on the population because of denial of foreign funding. In the long term, I think we'll suffer. So I would say that the government be well advised to avoid sanctions and to comply with international norms.
So basically, you heard it there from the horse's mouth. Mr. Granger outlining what would be the sanctions for his actions as of midnight 12. And so Mr. Granger is basically outlining what will be the implications. So I don't think we are in the dark anymore. He has clearly articulated what will be the issues. The government obviously ceases to exist. He's called for international sanctions on his illegal government. You would have heard it there. So I find it's not laughable anymore. But when APNU AFC persons try to trump up this integrity of Mr. Granger, and you are hearing videos such as these, and then you see a statement or address to the nation where he completely flips and does a U-turn, like he's oblivious to what he said when he was the opposition leader. It makes you wonder. I mean, this is a man who is or was the president of the country legally, right? And now it makes you wonder if he's sane sometimes. I mean, because I saw another video where he was making a similar statement. He was saying that he was just contradicting himself. I think one of you just pointed out as well, when you listen to his statements as we speak, he contradicts himself during the statements. So negotiating, or it must be a challenge. You are part of the teams that go in there to meet with Mr. Granger and his other.
Well, let me tell you though. When we were in government, and remember in 2012, in the first budget, they said they wouldn't support it, they'd cut it and so on. We went to these interminable meetings, 2012, 2013, 2014. And Mr. Granger would walk into the room with the PNC, AFC, Ramjatan, blah, blah. And they would walk into a room. And President Ramachar was very much, PVP comes out of this tradition of mediation, of negotiating, of trying to find a way forward when we're in a crisis or in a very difficult situation. That's been our history. And Mr. Granger would walk into the meeting at Office of the President, and he would, Mr. Ramachar was very gracious, and Mr. Granger would say, well, this is what we want. And, in our tradition is that's your starting point, and then you talk and you come down to what areas you can agree on. And Mr. Granger would say, no, that's it. This is what we want. That's it. There's no negotiation. And so my experience, I'd never known the man before 2011 elections. And I always thought he was ice cold. But but in that period of 2012, 2015, that's when I realized how this mirage he tries to create of being nice, decent. No. You're dealing with a person who is psychops, who has been trained by the GDF, who is very clear about his power, and very clear that he's a disciple of Burnham. And so, for me, his mask is taken off. For me, because I sat in those meetings over and over again, and we kept trying to find common ground. They cut us by $90 billion in that period. They cut out money for Amerindian communities and airstrips for Amerindian areas. They cut out money for the staff at the Office of the President. They didn't get paid for 3 months, etc., etc. So I am not in any way duped by this facade. And I think that he is an extraordinarily dangerous politician, actually, that's my view. And so nothing that has happened in the last 3 months surprises me. This is playing to the character that he is. Stay in power, he believes he can stay in power. The differences in the PNC, the moderates and hardliners, they fall into line. They fall into line. AFC, ditto. WPA, waste of time. WP has sold out every single principle and value that Walter Rodney put his life on the line for. That's true. And so, for you have Nelson Mandela said something funny one day. He said that wise men are few when fools talk a lot, and so that here there's this grouping of persons who are a collective that are not thinking, not independent, not willing to put country first. These are anti-national and anti-patriotic group of people. They're not putting nation first, they're not putting the people of our country first. And I think this is the rallying point for our people to recognize, save our nation, stand up for our country, stand up for the rights of the people, stand up for the Constitution. And after that, whenever the elections, we go and vote how we like. But at this point, this is the common platform, I think, of every Guyanese right now. That's what we should be, standing on that platform. And to be able to say to the Granger cabal that your days are over. It's only a matter of time. Your days are over. It's a matter of time. And that time definition could be a short time, a middle time, or a longer time. It depends on us, the people, being able to show our solidarity, our ability to cross all the barriers that the PNC has cultivated over and over again to divide us as a people. This is the time now that we have to say, no, we are not going to allow these barricades, these barriers, to hold us apart any longer. This is now the life of our nation and what our nation stands for, and we can't allow it anymore.
Now, before we've come close to the wrap-up time, before we get there, I'll invite every person to make a closing remark, starting with you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Romel. I actually wanted to pick up on what Comrade Gill was saying. In fact, the Burnham's rule book has no place in our society in contemporary time. One of the things that the PNC believes in is that there is strength in disobedience and defiance of the law. How it was chided for accepting the Carter formula and going into free and fair elections. You just call a softie, a sellout. So what you're seeing today is exactly what the PNC is at the core. They're about holding on to power. For some strange reason, they believe that Guyana belongs to the PNC.
They have transport.
And that is, it's absurd. It belongs to the people of this country, all 6 races, including the mixed race. So what they're practicing is totally a misfit. And when you talk about being fit and proper, if you want to see the reverse of that, you check the PNC. They are not fit and they're not proper. They've never been fit to run this country. They've never practiced good governance. They've never stuck to fair and decency, fairness and decency. And this is what you see playing out. Don't get carried away with the uprightness, fancy ceremonies, the good diction and good orators. It's all part of the theater to get you involved and feel as if you're part of the process. It's just trickery, and we cannot allow it to happen. It will never happen in this period of our democracy. We cannot reverse democracy easily. You can continue to move on a society in authoritarian rule, but once you taste democracy, you're not going to go back, and there will be a quick reversal of what we're seeing going on today, and that is what I wanted to add to that.
Thank you very much.
In this dark, uncertain time, somebody has a message of hope, and that person is our presidential candidate, Comrade Irfan Ali. I would urge the public to, whenever you get a chance, to go on Facebook and look for his speech at the fundraising dinner he had at his residence. The speech he gave there, it was short and it was full of hope. He spoke about hope, he spoke about harmony, he spoke about youths, and I want to urge people that you know there is better out there, and he will take us where we want to go. And so in this dark time, that's our message of hope.
Before we move from you, I know there's a call for persons, especially those in social media, to do a few things, because we've been asking persons that are interested in keeping the torch of democracy alive in Guyana, to show their support wherever they are. One of those, can you tell us about some of those
initiatives? So one initiative, we've asked persons to change their display pics to just a complete black screen as a form of protest against the erosion of our democracy. And we also want persons to come out and join us in peaceful protest. That is our right. That is the right of every Guyanese to take a stand, to stand up for our constitution, to stand up for democracy. We must do that for our children. We must do that to show that we were on the right side of history. I mean, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when the younger population is looking back on this time, they want to know what did you do? You know, yes. How did you stand up? How did you stand up for Guyana? So I want to be on the right side of history. I want something. I want to do something I can be proud of, and I genuinely want a brighter future for my country, for my children, and for the young people of this country. And as you can see, we do have a place in the People's Progressive Party. Our party is, if people take an objective look at it, evenly mixed. We have the older folks, we have youths, we have young people, we have people of all races. If they take an objective look, this is an inclusive party, and so I urge everybody to take a stand.
Thank you very much. Vikram?
Well, what is strange is that we have heard so many speeches about how the APNU AFC would have enhanced the reputation of Guyana regionally and internationally. But this simple act by the APNU AFC today has actually disgraced Guyana. And I can only think of the Jim Jones tragedy in Centennial. That probably rival how disgraced Guyanese are probably feeling now because of the APNU AFC taking us into this uncertain time, totally against our constitution and will of our people. And if we really look at why is it that the APNU AFC is afraid of calling elections? You know, why not set a date? You have been boasting that you have given the good life to Guyanese, you have restored the fortunes to Guyanese, and Guyana is now a heaven for investors, and you're so confident. So why are you not calling elections? We can only think that definitely they want to stay there, as Comrade Gill mentioned, to raid the treasury, and that is what they've been doing for a while now. As a matter of fact, they've been doing that for the past 4 years, raiding the treasury. And who enjoys the good life? A few, as Comrade Todd said. A few. Those are the ones who really enjoy this good life. So I can only think of them wanting to stay there as against the entire populace, just to raid the treasury, and the fact that they know that when elections are called, the People's Progressive Party will win, and we will return back to power.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Well, it's been an interesting early morning to be on a TV program. I think that when we put things in perspective, the People's Progressive Party, from its very inception, has been one that's always risen to the occasion to stand for our nation, to stand for our people. And if we go through all our history, struggles for independence, the pre-independence struggles and all of that, coming up into rigged elections, coming up into what you talked about, Hoyt and everybody else, that we have always, even when our own members have said that, you know, to do many things, to not take things lying down, that we've always had to take a highly responsible position. Mr. Jagdeo, before he met with Mr. Granger, sent him a letter March the 4th, in the interest of averting a constitutional crisis. This constitutional crisis we've now entered into could have been averted on March the 4th or 5th or 6th. And Mr. Granger could have that very weekend announced the date of election, given instruction to GCOM start, and elections would have been held April 30th, would have gone to Parliament, before March 21st, given the 2/3 support. So it is always the PPP that always, whether it is under Jagan, Sam Hines, Janet Jagan, Jagdeo, Ramatar, we've always had to, and now under General Secretary Jagdeo, we always have this responsibility. And so tonight is where the PPPC, the panels that have been on this program have been, one, explaining to the people how we've got to where we got to, and also to point the finger at where the blame lies. But more than that, and more than talking about what's going to happen after, because we really can't foresee all the things that are going to happen afterwards, as these are uncharted waters. But what we have to say is that the people of this country, can from today make it clear to the Granger and his group of merry men and women that this ends. This has to end, and that there has to be, whether it's a negotiated arrangement or whatever, and elections have to be held soonest. Not like Mr. Patterson said, that no earlier than late November, not like Mr. Granger's letter through Harman to Mr. Jagdeo is saying that not later, he's going to call election date soon, and it will be in keeping with Patterson. And Mr. Jagdeo wrote him back yesterday, saying that no, we're not going to accept this. We're not going to accept a date that comes not earlier than November. How can you have a date that's not earlier than November? And so we're not going to accept this, because it is a breach of the Constitution, it's a breach of good faith. This government has acted in bad faith all the time. And I think it is time now for Guyanese to say, look, enough is enough. That the government has crossed into dangerous waters, and we're not going to allow them to do that. We're not going to stand by and be quiet. We're not going to stand by and be silent. And we can show a number of ways that we disagree. We can show a number of different ways, so that we're saying to public servants, you get paid. You should get paid. So if the government says they're not paying you, it's them. Because the money is there, and it doesn't need any minister to sign off a warrant to pay public servants. It's the financial secretary and the accountant general and the REOs and the the permanent secretaries. So there's no reason to frighten our people. But at the same time, this government has to know. We have to show a variety of ways. You know, if they come into our communities, they say, leave. We don't recognize you. Get out of our area. Get out of our face. Get out of our communities. And you know, people have a way of having a silent way of doing that. This APNU AFC cabal went to communities in the last couple of weeks, and people have been showing their own dissent by not turning up.
Yes,
it's we used to call it in the pre-92 period, voting with your feet, and this is where people are also just not coming out in their own strongholds. They're not coming, and that's a form of protest. That's their own form of protest. So there are different forms of protest we can have, and so this is saving our nation, and as I said, defending our democracy and making sure that Mr. Granger has to come to the table with a date that is as soon as possible.
Good.
As soon as possible.
Well, with that, I want to thank all the members of my panel, and history will record tonight as probably the darkest in our nation's history. We have an illegal government that has usurped the Constitution, and I'm encouraging Guyanese and those of our friends, you can show your displeasure, you can show your objection, you can show that you are standing firm for democracy in our country by a number of ways, and you can also do that via social media and so forth. We know already persons have been making contact with us. They will be doing their posters from not just different parts of Guyana, but all over the world, that they will be united in terms of showing that they will not encourage the emergence of another dictatorship in Guyana. So you will also be hearing from us just a few hours from now, actually, because as the members here leave, they have to probably start preparing, because we have a very taxing day ahead of us. Today also the appeals court will make its ruling. So you will be hearing from us, you will be seeing us. And let me close the program now. On behalf of Ms. Gail Teixeira, Mr. Vikram Bharat, Ms. Suzanne Rodriguez, and Mr. Todd, I'd like to thank you very much. I am Roma Rupnarayan. Good morning, goodbye.